I guess you guys want to talk about that? Councilmember Lamb, should we put that in your court?
Sure, I'll start tonight. I'm trying to find the information that was sent to us. Both Councilmember Anderson and I thought we were going to have this later in the agenda so we could vote on it, but apparently it's just going to be a discussion tonight. So we'll go from there. When I first got on the council about a year ago, I was approached by some of the Planning Commission members just asking about stipends and stuff like that, and kind of getting in some information, and it looks like you've probably got what I was looking for right there, so that's great. And so as I talked to them and talked about, how stipends work, and I was new to the council, I said, why don't you give us some time to really look into this and see what makes sense for both the city and for the Planning Commission as well. I have done some research over the past year, and I know I've talked to former planning commissioners that were on the Planning Commission. Councilmember Jacob was on the Planning Commission and spent a lot of time there, and I also spoke to Councilmember Anderson about this as well. And so I wanted to bring this in front of the council tonight to discuss and see if it's something that we would be worth looking into in raising the stipend from $50 to $75. As we did some research from that, we looked and saw that in some cities they're doing $50, in some cities they're doing $75, in some cities they're doing $100. And I know that the people that are on the Planning Commission right now, I don't know if they're listening or not, but I think they do a wonderful job. They spend a lot of time. They aren't just on that Planning Commission for an hour each Tuesday or twice a month. They do spend considerable hours looking into the information that's given to them for zoning and for planning. They also attend other meetings as well. And so I'd like to throw that out there tonight to kind of discuss that and see if the council would be willing to raise that. I know that the last time it was raised, as I looked at the information, was 2008. So it's been about 10 years. So at this time, I wanted to kind of turn some time over to Alan real quick to see if he had any thoughts, as both him and I were the ones that were working on this.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilmember Lamb. I think this is a timely thing to have happen. In talking with our planning department, planning commissioners go out and visit sites, so there's some travel involved, there's time that way. There are also the meetings, even though it's kind of like us, we're up here twice a month, but in between they're reading packets, they're reading plans, they're visiting sites. We've added to the list with our council planning commission meetings that are on the 5th Tuesday on those months that we have the 5th Tuesday. And this is comparable to other cities. And it's been 11 years in the Planning Commission. What's different with the Planning Commission versus many of our other committees is the Planning Commission is actually required by law to meet, unlike our committees, which are just kind of dictated by the committees and what we choose to have as committees to volunteer. So I see it as a good way to be able to provide them a little bit of money to reimburse them for mileage, that they don't have to submit reimbursement requests, paying for their time when they're making phone calls or site visits, those kind of things. And so those are kind of my thoughts. Thank you.
Councilmember Jacob.
Thank you. Is this workshop style, by the way? Should we all be open?
It is.
Okay. Just wondering how formal we want to be. As the only one up here, I love echoes. The only one up here who's serving on the Planning Commission.
You might have to turn it again because I opened them all up.
There we go. As the only Planning Commission veteran up here, I can say that it is a volunteer, it is fun, it is something that you do because you enjoy it and because you want to make the city a better place. However, it is something that you're obligated to. You show up, quorums are required, the votes are binding, there are statutory requirements for a Planning Commission. It's not like another committee. It's something that is like I said, required by law. The votes that you take in some cases can make or break a development. There's a lot of public input. There's a lot of public hearings on some issues. Obviously, as we know, some are more publicly engaging than others. But it's a job. It's not unlike city council, and we get paid significantly more than $50 a meeting. So I called it, when I was on the planning commission, I called it city council light. Now, having been on the council for 3 years, I think it's not quite city council light, but almost city council light maybe. So I wholeheartedly support the idea. I think it's deserved. The people that do it, I mean, it's not a large expense for us. We're talking, what, $700 a month total times 12. So what are we talking about here? 700 times 12 is, I don't know, not very much money. So I wholeheartedly support the raise. It's not even that much. I was thinking doubling it to 100 with $700 a month. It's not even that much.
According to this, it's going to
$350
go
a
from $9,100 to $13,650.
A year.
There you go. So $4,000 for the grand total. Yeah, I wholeheartedly support it. I think it's a great idea.
Councilmember Burton.
I have a couple of questions. Councilman Anderson mentioned this, but I wasn't aware that they were getting reimbursed for mileage.
I never did.
They're not getting reimbursed for mileage.
Oh, I
The
didn't mention
stipend,
that.
well, what I was mentioning is there's two ways to do it per the IRS. You can either pay a stipend or you reimburse mileage and submit mileage. I don't know how that works with our city ordinance, as I didn't look in that. What I was trying to refer to is the $50 that they're currently receiving is for attending meetings, making phone calls, driving to site visits, so it kind of reimburses them for travel throughout the city so that they can be up here and make good decisions to make recommendations to us. So it's not a mileage reimbursement, it's just kind of all inclusive. Does that help?
Yep, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Whitelock.
So I have a different opinion because I feel like we just had an application period for Planning Commission, and we had several really good candidates, 5, I think, I could be wrong, for only 2 positions, 5 or 7 candidates for only 2 positions. So, and we are paying what many of our fellow cities are paying. We're paying about the same. Many of them are paying $50. So I feel like it's a volunteer position that they're applying for because they want to serve there. And I don't have the appetite to raise that, because, not that I don't think they do a great job and they put in a lot of time, but a lot of our volunteers put in a lot of time and do a great job. Not just our city volunteers, but volunteers are in our community. And that's what a volunteer does, is they serve. And oftentimes they serve at a budget deficit. I know that's very true for me and my family. I've served many years in PTA, usually at a budget deficit. So I think we are reimbursing them for expenses through the stipend that they currently get. So, and I did a little Facebook trolling to see what people would say, and I haven't checked because I've been in meetings since 3, but prior to that time, no one chimed in saying, yes, let's give them an increase. In fact, many said, wait, they get money for that? So if we weren't getting qualified candidates to apply to serve on our planning commission, then I would say there's probably a reason, but I don't see the need because we are.
Councilmember Conahey, if you want to make a comment, please raise your hand so we can note that. Okay, you're up.
Thanks. Sorry, I think there's going to be a little bit of feedback on this one. Are you guys still hearing me okay, or if I talk too long, does it start to squelch on you?
We can hear you fine.
Okay. So the Planning Commission, in my mind, while yes, we are asking people to volunteer their time, it does take a significant amount of effort and engagement. We're asking for a number of years of dedication. We're asking them to do something that's often quasi-judicial. There's a lot of education that goes into it. There's legal ramifications behind some of the decisions that have to be made. I think it would be very appropriate to make the change to $75. I would have no heartburn over that. The one thing that I do question is the electronics. I believe, are we currently providing them with like an iPad or something along those lines?
Yes.
Yes, the answer is yes.
If so, that's new. We didn't do that 3 years ago.
They do.
I question if that's something that's necessary for the Planning Commission because so many people typically already have their own devices. And frankly, even for the City Council, I think we should revisit that. The history with the council part is at one point in time, electronics were being provided to members of the City Council, and then there was the addition of a stipend for meant to cover electronics and communications. But the electronic devices themselves have not been removed from kind of the council package. So I don't know that the intent was ever to do both provide somebody with a city-paid device, but then also provide a stipend to cover the electronic usage as well. So if we look at that for the Planning Commission, we might also want to revisit that for City Council.
Any further discussion tonight on this issue?
Well, I guess to finish up, since this is a workshop, we can't have it on the agenda to vote on it, so what is the next step?
The next step would be if you would be give direction to staff, if that was the case, to come back with a resolution.
Okay. So I'd like to direct staff this time to come back with a resolution, whether it's first part of March or the second meeting in March, to look at raising the stipend to $75 per meeting.
So discussion to that
I
suggestion.
think there's 4 in favor of that, so I would say, go ahead. I don't know if you want to vote or whatever on giving direction to staff, but as long
No, I don't
as
think we
4
need to
people
vote.
nod their heads, I think we're good.
Okay, so the direction to staff, then we'd come back with a resolution to increase it to $75.
We certainly can do that. I'm going to throw an option to the council to decide if they want to do that on the March 13th. There is a meeting scheduled for March 6th. We'd have to get it advertised very, very quickly this Friday, but you could make the decision as early as March 6th, next Wednesday, during that evening's activities. If you'd rather wait till the 13th. The night of the 6th is the study report being performed regarding the city center.
I won't be here on the 13th, so that's not good for me, but I don't think we're in a hurry to pass this by the 13th. Would the second meeting in March be good?
We can certainly, we'll have it on
Let's
the
just do that.
13th. Would you like it as a
Would it be a
consent item or?
would it be a business item?
No, I think we can't.
I think it has to be a business item.
Yeah, it is a business item. All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank
Do
you.
we, are there 3 others that would like to open up the discussion beyond just compensation to also talk about electronics for Planning Commission?
I would.
I think electronics would be a separate conversation, if someone wants to bring that up, but I think we just stick to the stipend right now. As far as I know, there's...
It kind of goes along with the compensation package, which was my thought.
Well, as far as I know, there's no detailed written report that says they get a stipend for electronics. Am I wrong? For Planning Commission?
No, they don't, but they do.
No, they don't get a stipend for electronics, I don't believe, but I believe they're issued city hardware.
Scott, could you want to jump in there?
If it helps to clarify, once the commissioners finish their term of service and are no longer serving, they don't retain that iPad. That's property of the city, and so the next person up, if you get a new person appointed, they receive that, and it's kind of a hand-me-down. They don't, at the completion of their service, it's not theirs to keep. So I don't know if that clarifies anything.
It'd be similar to having a city computer in your office.
Exactly.
If Chris wants to talk about it, I'm happy to support a conversation.
Your mic's off.
Well, let's try it with the mic on. If Chris wants to have a discussion, I'm happy to support that. So I think we only need one more because I think Councilmember Anderson said yes. Is there a fourth?
So add that to the discussion or to the resolution for the 27th.
We can do that for the 27th.
Correct. Thank you.
And this has nothing to do with that, but I wanted to mention, Chris, where the light is, it looks like you have a halo around your head, so thank you for being so heavenly.
Oh, that's no life, that's natural.
Okay, we're going to start the next portion of our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, and the flag ceremony and Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Weeblo Scouts Pack 4092, the Flying Tigers. Julie Bendixson is the den leader. Take it back, take that. So everybody's off the...
Color guard attention, will the audience please rise? Scout salute, those not in uniform, please place your right hand over your heart. Color guard forward march. Color guard present the chorus. Please repeat the Pledge of Allegiance after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Color guard post the chorus. 2. Color guard forward march. Color guard display silence, may be seated.
Thank you, Flying Tigers. We'll now move to communications and start with the city manager and staff reports.
Thank you, Matt. There is one report from Chief Longtime doing
Thank you, Mayor and Council, and it's appropriate that Councilmember McConaughey be on a video screen tonight. I'd just like to have you all watch next week for those message boards on UDOT, on Utah's freeways, because the message will read, "Drifting is for the snow, not for drivers. Drive alert," with credit to the West Jordan city officials for that that model that we flashed out there. That was actually Councilmember McConaughey's idea, and John Gleason of the Utah Department of Transportation really liked that. Also wanted to pass on a note of appreciation from, I thought, an unusual source, and that is from our crossing guards. The crossing guards have commented that this year many of our snowplow drivers have gone out of their way to make sure that they get right up to the curb and get as much of that snow away from the school crossings. We've had one crossing guard injured in the fall, and we really appreciate the parks people that are getting out and getting the walks where we get those big drifts on the school crossings, and also for our snowplow drivers. It takes them a little extra time, but it makes a world of difference for kids that the snow's up to their knees or to their waist, and the crossing guards who have to traverse those mountains of snow. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Now we'll move to council member reports. Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't really have anything to report. I thought the flag ceremony was awesome. I will say that. So thank you.
Councilmember Jacob.
Thank you, Mayor. I was not going to have anything until the Chief's comment just now. I already had a shout out to the snowplow drivers on last time we met. I want to extend that to the crossing guards. I have seen in the last couple of snowstorms, as those crossings have gotten snow-packed, crossing guards take their snow shovels with them and shovel out that snow, slush, pile, the roadside heavy crap that they have to shovel, the snowplow piles up. And the crossing guards have been out there shoveling that, in between kid groups crossing. And so we have some awesome, very dedicated crossing guards. I just think that's amazing. Just wanted to mention that.
Thank you. Councilmember Whitelock.
I agree with Councilmember Jacobs. Their crossing guards are amazing people, and they do a great job for not much compensation because they love kids mostly. Last night I attended as one of my committee meetings, this Jordan School Board meeting, and they announced a new school for our city that will be elementary. It will be around 9,000 South and 6,400 West, so it's nice to be getting some of that bond money and to have a school that we need. A lot of our elementary schools have lots of kiddos, so that's wonderful. I wanted to thank our IT department and my fellow council members for allowing me to be joining them electronically last time. I'm just very grateful for that opportunity and want to say thank you to that. I, as well as some of the other council members, had the opportunity to tour the new Lucky grocery store, and I can't wait for the opportunity to go back and get some of those bargains that they're offering this week. So trying to choose the time wisely because I understand it's very busy. So thank you.
Councilmember Lamb.
Thank you, Mayor. We have a lot of great things happening in the city right now, and as Councilmember Whitelock mentioned, the Lucky store opened. I live in this area over by the middle school and by the Smiths over there, and we've been waiting, how long has it been, 8 years that building's been empty? 8 years, and we're lucky to have Lucky here. Dirk gave me that one this morning. But as I attended the grand opening this morning, I remember attending the grand opening of a grocery store. When I got there was a line of about 100 people waiting to go into a grocery store at 8 a.m. So I don't know if they're all from West Jordan, but you could tell people we're excited to have that store there. It'll be nice to have a second store in that area for us to go to instead of an empty Albertsons building. And I know that currently our economic development team is working on getting some of the other stores filled. As you know, the Kmart over on 90th is empty, and we're looking at a business to go in there. The Sears is empty in Jordan Landing. The At Home will be coming in there soon. Most of you know that Shopko's going away. If you look at all these businesses that have gone away, the big businesses, it's not West Jordan's fault. It's not our fault because we didn't shop there. They're large companies that either decided to close their buildings or went bankrupt. And so that's why they've been open. But our team is doing a great job of letting people know that West Jordan's a great city to be in for your business, and that there's great people here in the city that want to shop and stay in West Jordan. And so I want to thank our economic development team for all the hard work they do, and keep looking for new stuff coming in because they're working on a lot more that I can't talk about right now and that they haven't even told me either. But I know there's great things coming, and it's going to be here for the citizens of West Jordan. So thank you.
Councilmember Burton.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to thank those scouts who did our flag ceremony for us today. That's one of the new scout troops that were just formed under the new rules that they have. You may have noticed that. They meet at Ascent Academy. And we have several other scouts that are here with us today. Thank you for coming and joining with us today. I understand you have a powwow that's going on, and this is your opportunity, so this is great. If you don't get enough information here, I would love to talk with you afterwards. And if you want to talk to all of us, we'll have a time for citizens' comments. You, as a citizen, can take a minute and talk to all of us at the council, even today. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to share with the council a report from my visit to the Chamber West Board meeting that we had last week. Two primary items came out of that. Number one, there's a list of meetings where they would like to see some representation from the city if possible. There's two different types of representation they're looking for. Some of the meetings they would like a member of staff to be present. The other meetings that they would like an elected official to be present. These meetings include, if I'm looking at the list of events on the website, things like the Second Friday Casual Lunch, there's a Women Business Luncheon, various different events that they've got planned. Would there be any well, let me phrase it this way before I ask. What I'd like to do is get the list of events that they're looking for staff participation in and share that with Mr. Bricky to determine if it would be appropriate for somebody to attend. And for those events where they're looking for an elected representative to be present, I'd like to work with the various members of the council one-on-one to see which events you would each like to attend so that each of us can participate and kind of rotate through. Would there be support for this approach in working Chamber West?
You got a bunch of heads nodding yes.
Beautiful. The second thing I wanted to bring up is on that Chamber West board is a member of the Taylorsville City Council. And as we were talking about the Western Stampede coming up, he brought up the idea that we might want to look in future years to coordinate a little bit better between Westfest, Taylorsville Day, and the Western Stampede. The first thought that he brought up was perhaps public safety resources could be on top, could continue to be on top of some of the problem elements that are out there. But there might also be opportunities with sponsors or with vendors to try and leverage all three events and have a little bit better turnout and the highest caliber possible carnivals and booths and things of that nature. I want to be very, very clear that we are too late to start that for this year because sponsor packets have already gone out. But I would be interested to see if there's support from the council to direct staff to look for opportunities to work with our neighboring communities in preparation for the 2020 event. Would there be support from the council to proceed down this route as well?
We have some nods again. You got nods.
Awesome. That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I just want to report that I had an interesting experience today. Some of you know who Steve Leach is. Steve Leach kind of runs our Shore Gallery when we have art shows in there. And he is a veteran, and I talked to him about perhaps putting on a show of art that veterans do. There happened to be one up at the VA hospital today, and I went up there to take a look at it. Steve was up there even before me, looked at it, and was very impressed with the kind of artwork that was presented up there by these veterans. And most of the veterans that I saw and visited with up there were suffering from mostly PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome. And about half of them were Vietnam-era veterans, the other half were a lot newer veterans. Anyway, they were all in favor of trying to do this as well. And it was just interesting to hear them talk about how the artwork that they do helps them relieve some of the issues that they have in their lives. And there was photography, there was carvings, there was sculpturing, painting, watercolors, some I guess you could probably call modern art. One of the veterans I was talking to said that he hardly ever left his room until he started working with art. And he was there today. He said, I still don't hardly ever go out of my room unless it's to something like this that has something to do with art. So these veterans do suffer with some things, and it's really interesting to see how they can be open and talk about some of the issues that they've gone through and have. And so we're looking forward now to probably not till around the 1st of, I'm guessing around the 1st of April, somewhere in that time frame, for a veterans art display here in our Shore Gallery. And I think that's going to be just an exciting thing to see what they can do. So I'm excited about that. So there will be 4 opportunities to speak tonight. There will be the citizen comments, and then there will be 3 public hearings. So if you want to speak about one of the public hearings, you're welcome to do that at that time. And so at this time, we will open up City Council for anyone who would like to address the council. We'll open up public speaking. And I don't have anyone signed up. So if you would like to address City Council at this time, please come to the microphone and state your name and any contact information you'd like to give us.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Shuaib Dean, and I'm the Imam, the minister at Utah Islamic Center, currently located in Sandy. And with me is the chairman of the Board of Trustees, Nadeem Ahmed. And we just wanted to express a few concerns. First of all, we have been renting a facility in a strip mall for the last 12 years, our congregation, Utah Islamic Center. And we have outgrown that place, so we bought land in West Jordan City in 2014. And we serve the south part of the valley, so we have congregants coming all the way south from Riverton, Bluffdale, even Lehigh and Orem. And we serve as far north as Murray and Taylorsville. So anyhow, when we bought the land in 2014, we have been saving money since then to start construction of our new mosque, which we hope will start very soon in the next few weeks. And Sandy City wanted us to build the mosque in Sandy, and Cottonwood Heights also approached. I guess it was a match made in heaven. We are in West Jordan City, and we love this city, and we are honored to be here. So we have some concerns about the impact fee, and we have filled out the application for the appeal process, and we are hoping that we could be on the agenda for the work meeting, I think they call it, the work meeting for March 13th, because our contractors want to hurry along and start the building process. So those are our concerns. And yes, our place of worship will be open to the whole community. It is not just a place of worship and reflection, it is also a place of service. We are planning on having a food pantry to serve the needs of the local community, and it will be a place of education. Currently, we have Meet the Muslims program at our current location. For the last 2 years, we had this Meet the Muslims, and more than 3,000 people over time attended the Meet the Muslims and came in, and they thoroughly enjoyed having the interaction with the Muslim community. So anyhow, we look forward to being on the agenda soon. Thank you.
Thank you. And a member of staff will probably be in touch with you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address council this evening? Please come to the microphone. I didn't mention this earlier, but just as a reminder, there's a 3-minute time limit.
My name is Matthew Smith, 6676 Brook Maple Way. I wanted to address, I believe it's business item 9A, because it's not on the public hearing. I wanted to talk about it now. That is the proposal to add 2 or potentially design 2 roundabouts on 7800 South. I know that this current council may not be the keenest on roundabouts on arterial roads, but I was afraid that you might want to make those traffic lights, and I would encourage you not to, specifically because there's so many traffic lights in that area. Once you add all those together, you've got 2 at Mountain View. If you add 2 more, you've got 1 at 6700, 1 at 111, and 1 at 56. So that's quite a few traffic lights in a row, and it would definitely impede traffic. The second point that I wanted to make is Fallwater Drive. I don't believe that intersection should have any sort of protected access, either a light or a roundabout. The paperwork shows it as being at 6200 West, but from what I can tell, it looks more like 6265 West, which puts it at less than a block and a half from 6400 West. And so anybody that needs protected turning can easily go through the neighborhoods and get to 6400 West in order to turn. I just know that a big issue in the city is traffic and getting stuck on 7800 South. Right now, every day at peak traffic times, the traffic backs up from stopped at Mountain View. It backs up to the roundabout at Smith's. And when roundabouts are great, but when they're next to traffic lights, that means that we get gridlock at the roundabout. And so the 2 roundabouts that we're proposing are equally close to Mountain View, and I'm afraid that it would happen there as more people and more houses are built out there, that problem would get worse. So I encourage you to not put anything on Fallwater Drive and not replace a roundabout with a light at that location. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, good evening, Council. I wanted to comment on a consent item N, which is a change order. I know how we all feel about change orders, but I want to, before I make the comment, I want to step back. Oh, my name is Ben Southworth.
Pull your mic down a little bit, Ben.
All right, there you go. I want to step back about, it's a little over a decade ago when I was first elected to the City Council here in West Jordan. Within the first week, the thing that I addressed was a crossing at 70th South and just east of 4800 West. And city engineers from West Jordan, we had state regulators, and we had the UP all showed up, and we started working on a crossing. Well, it's been over a decade, and guess what? It's just starting under construction, and this is a change order from that piece. And as I understand, this is related to the UP again. Imagine that, the UP is being difficult. But my hope would be that this, I don't even know if this is an issue or not, but I'd hope that this would make it through this meeting tonight, and after a decade of work, that this intersection would finally be on its way to getting completed. It's a necessary portion of that part of the city. It'd be really nice to have. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak to City Council this evening? Please come forward.
My name is Rob Gudgel, and I just want to tell, I get to ride tracks to work downtown fairly often, and when I come home sometimes my wife's not there to pick me up, or I don't have a car because my kids have the car. You know, you guys can all relate to that, I assume, sometimes. So I get to walk home, which is delightful for me to listen to that. But I walk down 1300 West from track station at Gardner Village, and I take my life into my own hands because there's no sidewalks. And it's dangerous. And I know typically when new construction happens, you require the builders to actually put that in the cost of construction. But currently, because those houses are so old from farms and so forth, there's no requirement behind that. But I'm concerned because I'm not the only one that walks down there, and I assume that if nothing gets done on that at some point there could be some ugly litigation that could happen when someone gets hit out there because lack of doing, as we know sometimes attorneys like to go after everyone and anyone who has pockets, and cities typically are those peoples. And so my comment and question certainly is, what's being done in our city to rectify that between 70th South and about 8600 South on 1300 West? Are we going to do anything about that? There's lots of construction going on, but it doesn't seem like that ever is going to be resolved, and it's a simple fix in my mind. So, thank you.
Thank you. And again, I'd like to ask staff to take a few minutes and visit with this gentleman to explain where we are with that project. Is there anyone else who would like to address council? Please come to the microphone.
Braden Ellis, and just as Rob has talked about, my concern has to do with traffic, and in that same area of West Jordan. I have the unique situation where I live on 90th South and 1075, which I have seen lots of accidents there as people are coming in and out of that neighborhood. I have also seen some surveying, maybe, I have no idea. I've asked the city, and the city, it's UDOT property right there, so I've asked UDOT. I have no idea what's going on with that one. But I also have my office on 9400 South in Redwood, a very similar situation, and it does appear that there is progress on that there, that there may be some traffic light going in. But my understanding is both of those are UDOT, and I guess my concern is, why are we focusing on one? Why we have two of those, and I've been trying to get information on one, and the one on Redwood, somebody knocked on my office door and gave me information, and I don't know where to go on those. And that's my frustration, is I have seen a few fender benders on the Redwood one, and I've actually seen people hit and limbs severed on the 90th South one. I had great concern about that one. I have seen some very traumatic accidents there. And I hope that the city, and I understand a lot of that is UDOT dragging their feet on that, but I hope that the city can nudge them more than just residents can, because they don't listen to residents very well at that point. So I just hope that the city continues to consider how to push UDOT in the right direction on those intersections and stuff like that. But thank you.
Thank you, and again, I would invite a staff member to visit with you.
Mayor, can we get his name? I don't think he mentioned it.
He mentioned his name.
Brady Mills?
Brady Mills? Okay.
Ellis.
Brady Ellis. Thank you.
Yeah, my name's Thane Gates, and I live at 7973 South, 1300 West. And along the same line as that, my concern is 13th is one of the busiest streets here in West Jordan, and the lighting for that street at night is terrible. We've had big dogs that get out from neighborhoods and get hit because the people in the cars just don't even see them. We have cats. What's going to happen when a human gets hit? I think that's something that needs to be addressed along the same line, is the lighting. It's few and far between. The lighting right outside my house across the street has flickered for about 3 years, and I think it just barely got fixed. It would come on and go off. And the last time that somebody's, I don't know what type of dog it was, but it was a big brown dog, and it was a gorgeous dog. It got hit on 13th, and the driver didn't even see it. Now, I know that's something that the public is supposed to take care of their own animals and keep them secured, but how do we know that some kid's not walking down that street and goes to cross and the people can't see him? Thank you for your time.
And again, if you'll go out into the hall out there, there's one of the staff members is explaining some of the issues with 1300 West. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address council this evening? Seeing none, I will close the citizen comments and move to the consent items. And so far, I've been asked to pull consent items H and I, Hotel in India. Okay, so only I.
Chris has his hand up.
Councilmember Anderson.
Chris has his hand up.
Oh, Chris, sorry. There you are.
F is in Foxtrot.
F. Okay, I've been asked to pull F as in Foxtrot and I as in India. Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. On I, this would be going back to a prior council, but I just wanted to check with Brian or Justin. I had a few questions related to...
Do we want to approve the rest of them first?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I move to approve the consent calendar with the exception of F as in Foxtrot and I as in India.
Councilmember Lamb?
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Anderson and a second by Councilmember Lamb. Discussion to the motion? Seeing none, let's vote.
Councilmember Burton?
Aye.
Mayor Whiting?
Yes.
Councilmember Jacob?
Yes.
Councilmember McConaughey?
Aye.
Councilmember Whitelock?
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb?
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson?
Yes.
Vote passes 7 in favor.
Okay, I'm going to go to item number F as in Foxtrot first, and then we'll come back to I. So, Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. Quick question on this. Is this just stock to replace meters as they go out or install for new building, or is this part of the larger process to change out older older meters in a more systematic approach before they necessarily fail.
Fine.
And I guess really what my question is I'm looking at this, it's $1 million worth of inventory, and if this is just inventory that's sitting waiting for stuff to go bad, I don't know that I necessarily want 2,000 meters sitting in there depleting over the course of the year. I prefer to have a stock when it's set so that every quarter perhaps we order more. Instead of keeping 2,000, we may keep 500. But if this is part of the larger plan to replace meters in bulk, then it would make sense. So I just want a little clarification.
Thank you, Councilmember McConaughey. It's both. It's the stop, and it's also to start to continue with the change out to the 4G meters. We order these way in advance because there's such a long timeline to get them. They're up towards 2 to 3 months to get these meters. We just did an order 2 or 3 months ago, and we're just getting the last of that order, and those are diminishing as they start replacing meters or meters go bad. So they go pretty quick. We're just trying to be proactive to have those ready to go when needed.
How many did we replace last year, and how many do we still have on there?
I don't have those numbers.
Primarily with the residential meters.
I can get those numbers. I don't have them with me.
Okay, I guess personally, is this a once a year type of order, kind of what it sounded like in the staff report?
Yeah. Generally, I mean, like I said, we did another order, a previous order like 3 months ago. So 1 to 2 times a year, just kind of depends on how many meters will get replaced.
Okay. My personal preference would be to order more frequently lower dollar amounts rather than $1 million total or $500,000 just for the residential, maybe twice a year, $250. But that's just me. We can talk offline.
These are commercial. These are also commercial meters too.
Brian, do you know how many?
I saw the commercial meter app on there, and that one did cause concern because there weren't as many of them. They have a higher price tag. It was seeing 2,000 residential meters, but the cost of was $540,000, something like that.
Yeah, correct.
So that's it. I moved to, unless there's any other questions. I have one question.
We do have a couple more questions, Chris, so hang on a second. So the water utility replaces approximately 5,000 residential meters, registers annually, and approximately 250 commercial meters. How many are you anticipating buying with this money?
Oh, it's broken down as per size. I mean, it's residential would be the 1-inch meters, so we've got...
Oh, I apologize. I see where it is.
Yeah, looks like there's fittings with it. There's antennas that you have to buy, the lids you have to buy with them to do the remote read. I mean, it's more than just the meter too.
Okay, I see here.
Okay.
Councilmember Lamb.
Thank you, Mayor. Brian, real quick, what is the lifespan of these meters? I know I've been in my house for 18 years, and the house is probably 25 years old. Are these meters that we're buying, are they 25-year meters or longer?
Yeah, 20 years roughly with the new electronics, new technology. It's roughly 20 years. But it will, with the new technology, it's going to save time they read more accurate.
Right.
It's easier to read. So that's why we're changing out to the 4G.
Okay, because I know in my house I've got the original one that was there 25 years ago, but that doesn't have an antenna on it. So I'm just curious, as we're doing this, are these new ones made to last 25 years as well?
Roughly about 20, I'm told.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. The question I had for Brian, and this goes back to budget process last year. We had talked about potentially in the future getting an antenna that can read all the meters citywide so that residents would be able to log into their water account and see usage kind of on the fly. Are these, I'm assuming these are compatible with a potential budget green sheet on an antenna?
Yes, AMI system. These will read with the AMI system.
Okay. And then the second question I had is related to just a personal experience. If on the process of how we determine a water meter to be defective, I assume we're triggering it, or it gets triggered when there's a substantial difference in usage, and a broken meter underreports, if I understand it correctly, so it reports less water than what's actually being consumed. But do we verify if a resident has moved in and out, the account's in a different name before we go and replace the meter?
Generally,
Okay.
yes, and I from our offline conversation during strategic planning, I validated that, but yeah, that's how it's supposed to work.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
So back to Councilmember McConaughey.
Okay, then I would move to approve consent item 6, Athens and Foxtrot.
Councilmember Whitelock.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember McConaughey and a second by Councilmember Whitelock. A discussion to the motion? Seeing none, let's vote.
Councilmember Anderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Jacob,
Yes.
Mayor Whiting,
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb,
Yes.
Councilmember Burton,
Aye.
Councilmember Whitelock,
Yes.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Aye.
Vote passes 7 in favor.
Okay, item 6I, Alan.
Thank you. Apologize for jumping the gun earlier and not approving everything else first. On I just had a few questions also for Brian, and I had emailed them to you earlier, or to David, I think, and then he got them to you. But just based on prior council and prior discussion going back to the animal shelter and some issues we've had at City Hall, is this the same vendor that we've used previously?
No, this is a different vendor.
Okay, and then does the contract include parts and supplies, or those add-ons? So if we need belts or we need...
No, the parts will be, well, let me have Patrick speak on that. He's over that. I don't want to misspeak on this.
So it's basically...
It's basically a maintenance contract, just to keep the system maintained, so I'm assuming the parts are going to be additional if any parts are needed.
The city will provide belts and filters for all of the different buildings in the city. This contract is simply to maintain all of our mechanical systems. So this company will come in and take our belts and filters that we provide and maintain in a quarterly basis our facility.
So they'll change out the filters that need to be changed out. They'll change out the belts that need to be changed out. We're going through this process at my work with a bunch of about 50 rooftop units.
With that said, we've got a very aging system on some of our buildings. So if we have mechanical units break down, that would be a service call in addition to this contract.
And that would be all part of the contract? Or
Yes.
Okay. And then they're licensed and trained?
Oh, yeah.
Do we know? Okay. And then there's been, I just want to make sure that the work, the quarterly work is verified and validated. It's the old adage, trust but verify. We're making sure that they are replacing filters and changing out belts. I don't know that we check every piece of equipment, but I would think that some spot checks, random spot checks to make sure that those are completed appropriately in relationship to the contract is already a process we have in the city?
So we have a very detailed punch or a checklist, if you will, for each filter, each piece of equipment. So they will be checking that box, and we will have a facilities member with them at all times while they're doing this work.
To grant them access and
Correct.
and then just watch that they're doing it?
Correct.
Okay. I think that's all I've got, so unless someone else has something.
Doesn't look like it.
Okay, so I'll move to approve consent item 6I is in India.
Councilmember Burton?
Second?
We have a motion by Councilmember Anderson and a second by Councilmember Burton. Discussion to the motion? Seeing none, let's vote.
Councilmember Whitelock,
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson,
Yes.
Councilmember McConaughey,
Aye.
Councilmember Jacob,
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb,
Yes.
Mayor Whiting,
Yes.
Councilmember Burton.
Aye.
Vote passes 7 in favor.
We'll move to the public hearing items. Public hearing item 8A, receive public comment and consider for approval Resolution 19-40, allowing a service in lieu of fees for West Jordan Pony Baseball regarding use of the baseball diamonds at Veterans Memorial Park in an amount not to exceed $8,590. Dave Naylor.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As per policy, I'm presenting this application for consideration for service in lieu of fees for the amount of $8,590. As you notice, this is a multi-year service in lieu of fees. It covers 2019 and 2020 at request of the applicant. And there is representatives here from West Jordan Pony Baseball that would be glad to answer any questions for you, and they plan to speak in the open public hearing also. That's all I have.
Okay, Councilmember Lamb. Wait, Councilmember McConaughey, you were waiting?
I was stretching my nose to my forehead and got out of there.
Okay, Councilmember Lamb.
Thank you, Mayor. Dave, the only question I had, and this is going to be for the other business item as well, why is there a huge difference in cost for one field versus the other? Do they just use more fields at Ronwood?
So there's additional fields at Ronwood, but then there's a substantial amount of different play time. And so Ronwood does have lights, and so they're extended hours.
Okay.
And so the fields are charged by hour, and so those, as those hours extend, and it also extends that amount of fee that is there. So that's definitely the reason. The Copper Hills Baseball has more teams also, which then extends those play times.
When you look at the two at first, you're like, man, it's cheaper to play at the park over here than over at Ronwood, but if they have more teams and use more time, then that makes sense. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion from the council, no further questions, that we'll open up the public hearing comments. So if there's anyone in the audience that would like to address this issue, we'll now open that up for you, and to remind you that there's a 3-minute time limit.
Hi, Council. My name is Ryan Sam. I'm the president for West Jordan Pony Baseball. Appreciate your time this evening in considering this. We just wanted to thank you for putting it on your agenda, and also answer any questions you may have, but also enlighten you with regard to what it is West Jordan Pony Baseball does as service in lieu of those fees. Is part of our volunteering. We do field cleanup at the beginning of every season, where we take those 5 fields and we prep them for the season, doing weed control, rock control. We grade some of the dirt, get rid of the lips that are on the outfields to the infields, and we involve our constituents, our players, our teams, our coaches to get involved with the field cleanup. Each day after we play, we usually spend between an hour, hour and a half after games and stick around the fields and clean up after baseball games with regard to anything left on the fields, whether it's gear, whether it's trash, those kinds of things. We also, in part of those fees as outlined in kind of in the proposal, is this year we wanted to donate portable mounds and field signs that talked with Dave a bit about what kind of the city was looking for with kind of in lieu projects with relation to that. So just wanted to let you know that A, we appreciate your considerations, and B, if you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Redding and West Jordan City Council. My name is Rob Durfee. I'm the president of the Copper Hills Baseball League. First, I would like to thank Dave Naylor, Lindsay, and Travis with the Parks Department for all the help you guys had with going through this. It's been quite a long process. There's a lot more to it than just coming before you guys, as you know. I think you've seen our report. So we've started this November, I think, just to get where we're at today. So last year, I want to thank you guys for doing the waiver. We did the waiver last year for the first time. We come before you. We didn't even know it existed before last year. We had about 500 volunteers last year, 300 adults, 200 kids. We did about 3 hours volunteers service per person at our fields. We showed up at the fields. We met with Travis ahead of time. A few projects that the city asked us to do, along with some of our own. Out around Wilds, we get a lot of wind. Along our fences, we had tumbleweeds, 100 feet, 200 feet of tumbleweeds as far as you could see. Another project that the city asked us to do was to clean up the pesky pine needles that get in their mowers. We cleaned that up. We had so many volunteers last year that we also extended outside of the park and cleaned up. There's 2 pavilions that go over to the splash pads. We cleaned all that area up. We had so much trash that we cleaned up about 50 dumpsters, 50 trash cans, and 1 roll-off container in that. So we did that last year to meet what the city asked to hit the LUA fees. Ashley also contacted us, which was the thing last year. She said that she needed some volunteers for the Comcast Cares project. We worked on that. We came up with 75 volunteers for that. She asked us to do a project for that. Out at our fields, our scoreboards, the metal post out there had got quite rusty. We're getting a little bit bad, so we purchased the paint, sanded those, painted those, and then we had several other volunteers do projects throughout the community on that day, which was also a day that we had a big event of our own. So we did that in the morning and then did our event. So last year we would have paid the city about $9,000 in fees after rainouts, minus our deposits. So I think the reading through our things, we would have paid you $14,000 with our $5,000 deposit. So we would have paid $9,000. We never intended to keep that money. We took that $9,000 last year. We wanted to put it back into the fields. I came before you guys as a council, got it approved, and then we've given you guys some packets up there, and we put in some awning covers over the bleachers. So those awning covers that we put in, for number one, they were for safety. So anybody that's at a baseball park, if you've been out there, foul balls are our number one thing. Insurance, safety. So 2, living in Utah, spring baseball, sunny 1 minute, rainy the next. Might have a little snow to go with it. It's also Ron Wood, so we're going to get some wind. So the money that we would have paid the city, we did ask that we could have that, and we put that money right back into the field. So the $9,000 that we would have paid the city, we actually spent $10,240 that we put into those awning covers that we put back into the field. So we came to the city this year, again, asking if we could do the lieu of waivers. We actually asked for a 2-year thing. Part of doing the 2-year thing is, so 1, we don't want to tie up the staff for as long as we do to do it. 2, we want to complete the project. In those same things, there's the receipt with the bid for this year. Those awning covers went up $300 each, so that's $1,192 increase between last year and this year, and I'm running out of time already. So that's the big thing. So we want to get those wrapped up. If we can do the rest this year, we'd like to get those done. And then we've also agreed to do some awning covers. One of the big changes from last year to this year, as you guys have asked us, is on a contract that we have signed saying that we would do those. So we have signed all that. So that's kind of the big part where we sit with you guys. We've agreed to do the 400 hours of community service. We've done those since the fields have opened in 2003. We'll continue to do that. Community service hours. That's been, something we just always have done. So if you have any questions on that, feel free to ask.
Just so council knows, he was talking about 8B, and we're still working on 8A. So anyone else that would like to address council regarding 8A? Excuse me? 8A. Okay, with that, I will close the public hearing and come back to council. Councilmember Jacob.
Thank you. I just have one question for staff. That is the valuations that are assigned to these service in lieu of fees. For example, on this one, we have 100 people for a 2-hour cleanup, so $200 at $10 an hour. Is there any auditing that's done to see how many people come, or do we just assume, or how does that play out?
So if you notice the difference between last year's service in lieu of fees and this year's service in lieu of fees, there is an agreement that is attached to this. So it ensures that we're going to get what was presented to us in the fee waivers that we allocated to them, that we're getting that value. And they're responsible for tracking those hours and submitting receipts for any materials or awnings or flagpoles. They are to submit the receipts to the city for an audit. The tracking of the service hours, last year they were required to do sign-in sheets with every member that come for those hours and then turn it into the city. It's a really, really good move, and I'd like to thank Rob Wall for catching this agreement portion in this, because it just gives the city some security that we are going to get the service that was presented to council out of it. So
awesome, thank you. I just wanted to double check on that, and I wanted to say thanks for coming to the baseball leagues. Little League Baseball played a very large part of my life for a lot of years, so I very much appreciate it. And whenever Little League is on the agenda, we always have a good turnout here. So I appreciate you guys coming out and supporting your request. Thanks, guys.
Councilmember Whitelock.
So my light was on just to thank staff for adding that, that you're giving credit to Mr. Wall for. I'm sure it was a combined effort. I appreciate that, because as I always say on these, this isn't our money. This is the citizens' money, and to just waive fees without anything in return is hard for me. So I also want to commend the baseball leagues for not just coming and saying, please don't charge us, but saying, hey, let's work in a win-win situation. So thank you.
Councilmember Burton.
If there are no further comments, I'm ready to make a motion.
Please do.
Okay. Chris has a comment. I will hold.
Chris. Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you. Moments like this, I wish Councilmember Southworth was still up on the dais, because his comments were always so much more eloquent than mine. I just wanted to say thank you to the league. It was mentioned that last year was the first year performing service in lieu of fees. And really, there's so much the kids learn through baseball, and having this be kind of their first interaction with municipal government, where you're working with the park, contributing to the park, it's really becoming your park, and there's a sense of ownership there. I think this is a perfect partnership, where the kids are able to help contribute to the community, where they're recreating, where they're learning and growing, and really make this feel like home. Thank you for listening to us as we ask for an approach to change the service in lieu of fees. I personally feel like when I was a kid and I went that route and performed some of the service, I learned a lot. And I'm really grateful that the kids in the league have the opportunity to learn those same lessons today. So thank you for listening to us, working with us. And again, to the kids, thank you so much for making these fields your own. Literally making them your own. All the improvements and everything else that you're doing, taking the lead. I'm sure there's some little scout projects that go into these along the way, but just thank you so much for your participation, for coming here tonight, for getting involved, and giving us as a city the opportunity to help you, and conversely letting us, helping us with the ability to make the parks a little bit more friendly to everybody that's out there, and improve them, leave them better than how you found them. So thank you very much. I'll be very much in support of Councilmember Burton's motion. In fact, I'd like to claim seconds on it before he offers it.
Councilmember Burton.
Thank you, Mayor, and you're certainly welcome to second that. And I agree. I think it's a fantastic partnership. I also like to mention, even before we did the official service in lieu of fees, it was still something we benefited from, because what you always did and took care of it, and the way you took care of it, And I know you're doing the service even before it was recorded, so this isn't anything new. The part that's new is we know what you're doing now, so that's fantastic. So I move to approve resolution number 19-40.
So we have a motion by Councilmember Burton and a second by Councilmember McConaughey. Discussion to the motion. Seeing none, let's vote.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Absolutely aye.
Councilmember Burton.
Aye.
Councilmember Whitelock.
Yes.
Mayor Whiting.
Yes.
Councilmember Jacob.
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson.
Enthusiastically, yes.
And Councilmember Lamb.
Yes.
Vote passes 7 in favor.
Okay, public hearing item 8B, receive public comments and consider for approval resolution 19-41, allowing a service in lieu of fees for Copper Hills Baseball League regarding use of the baseball diamonds at the Ronwood Baseball Complex in an amount not to exceed $32,560. Dave Naylor.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Again, this is a very similar item. It's our Copper Hills Baseball League located at the Ronwood facility, and they are requesting $32,560 in service in lieu of fees. That is combined with service and also materials. Very similar to the last one, so the applicant has presented, has already represented their league in the last one, so that's what I have for you. Thank you.
Questions for staff? Seeing no questions for staff, I will open up the public hearing at this time. Anyone wishing to speak regarding this issue, please come forward.
Good evening, Council. It sounds like this may be kind of a foregone conclusion, but I wanted to stand up and just thank you guys as leaders in our community for taking the time to consider such actions. I know from staff for years I've been part of the organization out at Copper Hills. I've spent 10 years on the board on their volunteer board out there.
Can you give us your name?
It's Brett Rudy.
Thank you.
Yep. Sorry about that.
I'll vouch for him.
But I was part of a similar discussion probably 7 to 8 years ago when council changed the structure of the fees at the field. For years, in addition to Rob Durfee's comments earlier on the other agenda item, but some of the other things that as a league we've really prided ourselves over years to really giving back to the Ronwood Park. Years before that, when I played in the league as a youngster, when it was at Veterans Memorial, before it was Veterans Memorial, for years. But we provide really services year in, year out. We've provided obviously the scoreboards that are housed out at the Ronwood Park. We've donated those over the years. Been part of agenda items to propose the donation of those. So. We continue to do that year in and year out. So we, number one, thank you guys for your consideration in waiving that, as well as want to take the opportunity to thank staff from the Parks Department. I know I've worked with Brian Clegg for years when he was over the parks, and now with Travis Johnson out there, they do a phenomenal job in taking care of our park and helping us out there, and we continue to do our part as well. Not only in our, day of service where we do field cleanup, but nightly with helping to rake out the park and bringing in bases off of the fields to keep those from getting stolen, those types of things. So just want to again say thank you for your guys' effort in making the youth of our community benefit from those. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on this item?
Good evening, Council. My name is Jason Hansen. I am a citizen here in the West Jordan community. I am a recent relocation to this area, and I am not a member of any of the baseball leagues that have been here represented here tonight. And the first I heard about this was actually in the West Jordan News that got delivered to my mailbox today, and I got a chance to read that article. And I was intrigued by some of the discussion that was involved in that, and some of the concerns that some people had expressed about utilizing the power of the city to waive fees in lieu of service and other things being brought to the community. And I was actually extremely proud of the city council and the other citizens, notably Mr. Naylor here, for considering those options, because there are many times when groups have plenty of opportunity to serve, but may not always have the dollars to pay for the fees. And just the willingness to look at that, I applaud you for that kind of consideration. And also providing opportunities for service that is meaningful, that provides ways of improving our community and ways for people to give back in multiple ways. So I wholeheartedly support these types of actions and this particular, these two proposals that have been before the council today. And want to say thank you for this type of action, because it is not always the same way in other areas that I have worked, lived, and been a part of a community where there is a cut and dried, you must pay at all costs and will not accept any other ways. And so I applaud you for this forward thinking. Thank you.
Anyone else who would like to address council this evening regarding this issue? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and come back to City Council. Councilmember Burton.
McConaughey had his hands up first, so I'll let him go first.
Councilmember McConaughey.
I forget I've got the phone in front of me, but I've got to figure out the phone here. For this particular league, I want to say a special thank you for what was done with the fallen officer memorial. Very appropriate to have that at this park, and all the work, all the effort that went into that. Above everything else that's been done at that park, all the other improvements, the improvements to the pillars, the lights, some of the scoreboards, all those different things are fantastic. But thank you especially for the fallen officer monument. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Burton.
If there's no further discussion, I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay, do it. Did you want to make a second?
Yeah.
You popped up, so I gave in to you, so I apologize. I am also thrilled to make this motion to approve Resolution 1941.
Second. And we have a second by Councilmember Anderson. So a motion by Councilmember Burton. Discussion to the motion. Seeing none, let's vote.
Mayor Whiting.
Yes.
Councilmember Whitelock.
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb.
Yes.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Aye.
Councilmember Burton.
Aye.
Councilmember Jacob.
Yes.
Vote passes 7 in favor.
Public hearing item 8C. Receive public comment and consider for approval ordinance 19-13, amending the 2009 West Jordan City Code Title 13 Zoning Regulations, Chapter 5, Establishment of Zones, Article C, regarding plan development zones, citywide applicability. City of West Jordan applicant, Scott Langford.
Thanks, Mayor, City Council. I want to just off the bat recognize the work by Mr. Gardner, Larry Gardner, and Duncan Murray on this text amendment. As you know, our planned development zones often attract a lot of attention, and as of late, as we are working on large master plans out on the west side of the city, it's come to light that our process, as you can see on the slide, can be a little bit daunting to navigate. And as we looked at our current process to get entitlements for these master plans, as we looked at recent case law, state law, we've come to the conclusion that it would benefit the city to make a few adjustments. I won't go through all the changes. You've got your staff reports, and I can answer specific questions if you have them. But the main point that I want to point out to the council tonight, the main change, is that if you look at the two-step process right now, you have multiple, I guess, bites at the apple. You've got a planning commission public hearing where you have a concept plan presented in conjunction with a general plan amendment and a rezone. The commission then makes a recommendation to the city council. You have the potential of having two meetings at the city council meeting where you're reviewing the recommendation by staff and by the planning commission. If that's approved, then they get to move to the next step. And that, going through step one currently does not entitle a developer to any buildable lots. They got to go through step two, which means they've got to step up their concept plan and come to the council with what we call currently a preliminary development plan. And it goes to the commission and then to the council. Long story short, it takes many public hearings and a lot of time from staff, from the development community to get to the point where these developers actually have entitlement. The proposal before you tonight is basically to move basically short circuit the process and make it quicker, where the city will require more information up front from the developers so that prior to the city council weighing in or changing our general plan or our zoning, you have the opportunity to get a lot of detail up front. Basically we're including, or we're calling this extra information the master development plan. It's a combination of the development agreement and a development plan. So the development plan has more of the graphics and the layout that you've reviewed in the past. The development agreement talks about terms of who pays for what and when. And so all those details will be up front before the council is asked to make any decision on our general plan or our zoning. So that provides a lot of flexibility to the council and to staff as we work on these proposals. Because we're asking for a lot of information up front, if the council approves all of that highly detailed information, and if the developers comply with those approvals by council, the back end, step two if you will, is much quicker, and we can get houses and buildings and businesses out of the ground a lot quicker as they comply with that. So there are a lot of other smaller adjustments to the PC and PRD zones, but I just wanted to point out that the main point of this text amendment is to make the process more efficient and give the council more information right from the beginning. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I just want to make one comment before we go to your questions, and that is that first bullet point on there. I'm very happy to see that, where a development agreement must be approved concurrently or before making application for a zone change of a land use amendment. I think that's very critical to making this whole process move through a little smoother. So that was, in my opinion anyway, that was very good. So with that, Councilmember Burton, you're first up.
Thank you, Mayor. So I do have a question or two. I see there's several others that have questions as well, so I'll probably just limit it to one for right now and may come back to it. I think this is good. I like where we're going with this. But on some of the small things you mentioned, just administrative things, it looked like to me you're changing the PC zone from 75 acres to 200 acres. Did I read that correct?
From 50 acres minimum to 200 acres.
Can you explain why we want to make that change?
Well, as I've indicated in the past, these master plans are best done on a larger scale. We're trying to, and gratefully West Jordan has the ability to do this, where we're trying to build an integrated, balanced community. And by incentivizing these larger tracts to come in all together, we can look at a bigger context, and in our experience, that leads to a more balanced community. And so sometimes 50 acres, you don't get enough mixture of uses, and it's hard to achieve that balance that we were hoping to get. And as you know, the cap and grade, a separate ordinance, allows for additional attached unit multifamily, and it's harder if we allowed somebody to come in with a 50-acre PC zone and try to, in my opinion, do an end around the current cap and grade ordinance. So this is kind of protecting that as well.
So if somebody wanted to come in with, if we approve this change, under 200 acres, would it just be, let's say it's 199, just make up a number. Does that mean the entire project would be the same? It wouldn't have the different amenities like a PC zone would?
You'd have to use our existing Euclidean type zones, and your standard R110, R18, and kind of cobble it together that way.
Right. So my concern would be, and maybe as I listen to the public hearing, it'll help answer that for me, that we would have blocks of things instead of a plan. And I'm concerned that even on this, as we call 199 small lots, that's not a small lot. But if we say 50 or where it is now, I still think that's better than just having a block like we go back to. So I'd like to hear more information on that. See if we want to make that change.
That's a good comment. And if I may, to refer back to the cap and grade ordinance, the acreage listed in the cap and grade under a plan development is actually 75, so it doesn't exactly mesh. So I get where you're coming from. Perhaps something that the council could consider, instead of leaving it at 50, if you just adjusted it to 75 instead of the 200, that might be a fair option as well to consider.
And I think that's where I took the 75 from, because that's, yeah. I remember that from the discussion. Thank you.
Councilmember Whitelock.
So perhaps I need to hear more of Dirk's concerns, because I was actually glad to see it go up to a large parcel, because I felt like that would bring more amenities to our community, because then we can ask for more things. So I was happy to see that. Most things have gone up, but in garages, and I don't know what the two's under, it says garages and PC zones, it's 2A, and it went from 5 feet to 2 feet. But like I said, most every measurement goes up except for this one. What's the reason to decrease?
I'm sorry, what page of the report are you looking?
23. Number 2, A. If I go back far enough, I'll probably find a Roman. 13-5C-5, setbacks and height. It says garages facing directly on a public or private street, whether in front or side yard, shall be set back behind the front facade of the living area portion of the dwelling or a covered porch at least, and it used to be 5 feet and we're going down to 2.
Yeah, I see that. Honestly, I don't know why Mr. Gardner made that change. The original requirement, I can tell you, is to break up and instead of make the garage the most prominent, closest element, to set that back. If the council wanted to keep it at 5, I'm sure that would be perfectly fine.
If we don't have a strong reason to decrease it, I kind of like the 5 feet.
Okay.
Councilmember Jacob.
Thank you. Hey, while we're on that page, I didn't actually think about this sooner, but on, oh, you know what, that's side or rear loaded garages, never mind. I was thinking garage setbacks, that we need to make 22 feet, not from the property line, but from the back of the sidewalk, but this is side or rear loaded garages, so scratch that. What I wanted to ask was, have we heard anything from the development community, some of the large landowners, the developers in the community that that frequently come to us with PC zones? There's a few large, family-owned tracts of land that are looking to develop in the near future, next, 5 years, 10 years, out on the west side. Have we consulted with any of them on any of this as far as the process goes? I'm not really worried about the details on setbacks and things like that. We can dig into those pretty much any time, but a major change to kind of a process that everybody's used to, I would love to have input from those people, and I may be mistaken. I don't really see any here tonight. There's like 2 people in the gallery that I don't recognize, so I could be wrong, but I just wonder what the kind of input from the community has been, if any.
That's a great question. Our current process was an evolution of dealing with the development community. They at one time were really squeamish about fronting too much information. It cost them too much to get all these detailed plans. Well, things have changed, and we have had conversations with, I don't want to name names, but very prominent #1 home builder in Utah companies, and they're on board with this. And we've had conversations that this is something that they're used to in other cities, other municipalities. And so, yeah, I appreciate that question, and they are on board with this.
Okay, and do we have a plan in place as far as notifying maybe some of these that have pending requests or that have kind of started down the road that we know of? Do we have a plan in place to, notify them of the new process should this pass?
The only one that was in the queue during this point of transition was the Oquirrh Mountain Resort.
They did this. That's kind of the...
And they are doing this exact same thing. And so there are nobody else that, other than Ivory Homes. Ivory Homes has submitted about a 230-acre plan. It's really early in the process, but they're aware of this and they support it.
And that's a planned community?
Yes, it will be.
Potential, okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. This is also for Scott. And we've talked a lot about Euclidean zoning and form-based zoning. And I really like how this is going. My only concern is I think there's a middle ground between the 75 acres and the 200 acres. 200 to me, I worry that there's enough parcels out there that are 198 acres, 170 acres that don't fall into this, but you could create a really good community with that acreage. So I do agree that maybe it needs to be more than 75, like Councilmember Whitelock was saying, but I don't know that I would go to 200 per se. But I don't know what that number is. If I had my choice, I would get rid of Euclidean zoning except for infill and do planned community or planned residential developments everywhere else, so that you can kind of build that sense of community and parks and amenities and different varying lot sizes and different land uses. I think that's where we're headed. So I don't know what the answer is, but I think more than 75 is appropriate. I don't know if 200 is the right number. Maybe it's 175 or 150 or 100 or something in between.
And I don't have a magic number either. However, to comment to your question, if you read our current code, the PRD, the Planned Residential Development, it was, I don't have the exact language in here, but it gave a general guidance, a general number, but it was as determined appropriate or something to that effect by the city council. I hate to have a code that nebulous, because as my staff needs some real good clarity when we sit down with developers. So I don't know if the attorneys want to weigh in on that, but that's the way our code currently reads, is as determined by the city council. It would be good, though, to have some general benchmarks to shoot at.
No, and I agree with that. So those are just my thoughts. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Whitelock.
So Scott, do you know how many parcels we have that are, have we looked at what the parcel sizes that are available still are out there? Is that hard to do?
It would take some time. I don't have that tonight.
Okay. I just think that might be helpful in coming to a number.
And what's really challenging, we can grab a quick number. Our GIS department's fantastic in providing information, but land consolidation happens all the time. So you may have different properties that can be cobbled together that would then be over the certain acreage. So it's really shooting at a moving target.
Yeah. Okay.
Seeing no more questions, I will open this up for public comment, open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to address this item, please come to the microphone. Lights. Camera. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and come back to City Council for further discussion. Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. A few things that questions, but also mixed with opinions, so probably better for this portion. First up, section 13-5C-2, where it's talking about the process and we're talking about the development agreement. I may have missed it, but I didn't see anything in here that specifically ties any approvals to that development agreement. I just want to make sure that if there's a change in ownership, the new owner is still held to that development agreement.
Those will be conditioned in the development agreement. Does that answer your question, Councilman McConaughey? And that's perhaps maybe a question better for Mr. Wall or Mr. Murray.
Mr. Wall has his lights on, so.
Yeah, that's a very good question, and it's an important point. What you're not saying here is that we are almost finished completing all of these standard provisions that we would require be in any development agreement, and one of them is specifically the question that Councilmember McConaughey raises, and that is that the obligations and the rights flow with the property itself. So irrespective of who owns it, they're obligated to perform the conditions that you approve in the development agreement, even if it's 3, 4, 5 property owners later.
Okay. Thank you. Just wanted to be sure about that one.
Yeah.
The next one I wanted to call out was when we're talking about the different sizes of the property. I kind of like the increase in the size. We're talking about the sizes for the PC and the PRD. Could we, and this is probably just me learning from painful prior experience, could we add some language to clarify that the acreage to be considered is the acreage of the project as proposed? I'm not sure the best way to wordsmith it, but what I'm trying to avoid is a scenario similar to what we saw over on 7800 South and 1300 West, where you had a large amount of property that had already been developed and built on, and then another developer came in and said, yeah, it's only 11.4 acres, so it doesn't meet the PC size requirements. However, if you consider it the totality of everything else that's already been built before, it should meet that, and therefore we should be able to do just the housing portion on this parcel. I would like to see some language to make it very clear that if you want to do whatever's in your proposal, all of the property needs to be in that. It can't be cobbled together with pre-existing if that wasn't part of it previously, unless it goes through a specific appeal process to the counselor. I don't even know if we want to do that, but does that make sense?
Scott?
Yeah, that does make sense, and we could work on the wording.
The other part that I wanted to bring up was where we talk about the different elements that have got to be included. Let me jump back to the staff report for the summary because it was a lot easier here. You've got that request for council action page, and then the second page is below list. But for every 500 residential units proposed in PC zone, they need to get 2 of the list below. I'm not sure I agree with all of the items on the list. So in my mind, the reason we're asking for additional amenities is because the additional toll the density takes on the community. So some of these things do benefit the community as a whole. For example, parks and trails or the side strip that's 10 foot wide, that helps benefit the entire community. But some of these items, like a pool and a clubhouse, really only benefit the folks who live right there and don't necessarily help offset the impact of the rest of the neighborhood. So I would rather not see those HOA-specific elements that are only available to the folks who live there. I'd rather not see those included in the list. I think those will probably happen anyways to help entice people to move into the community. I don't think that should be seen as, how do you say, I don't think that should be a basis for the additional density that they'll likely get by moving to PC or TRD. So I'd like to revisit that list. That's just me. The last thing, I just jumped out to me when Councilmember Whitelock was talking about setbacks. You go to 13-5C-5, section D, number 3. It says the setback shall be 13 feet with no less than 5 feet on one side. Should that read shall be no less than 13 feet? Otherwise, I mean, we're going to require some rather wide homes.
Yes, that makes sense.
Those are all my comments for now. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Rob Wall?
Mayor and Council, could I suggest something that maybe we could consider? If you look at 13-5C-5, paragraph 2, where it's A2, where it's talking about the minimums of 200 acres, a comment and then a suggestion. There are other situations where you might want to require a development agreement. It could even be in a 5-acre parcel or a 10-acre parcel if there's a unique exchange of something, for example, that you want to do. And that's not uncommon. I think it's good to have a standard in here like we have, but maybe to accommodate the question I think that came from Councilmember McConaughey, and then I'm not sure which one of you alluded to it also. If we were to go down to the 4th line where it begins in paragraph 2, 200 acres if the developer can reasonably show, we could change that to read, if the city in its sole discretion determines that the surrounding neighborhood will not be adversely affected. That then puts in your decision-making authority the option to allow a 150-acre or a 75-acre or whatever if you determine as the policy-making body of the city that there will not be an adverse impact. And in fact, your determination, for example, could be that there would be a very positive impact for the city if you were to do this development. And the reason that could work is that under the state enabling language of the Land Use Management Development Act, there's a statement in there that arguably, and some cities take this position, allows you to require development agreements even if you don't have anything in your city code that says you're going to. It's very broad, and it says you as an elected body are allowed to. And so with what's in the state code and changing that to say it could be less than 200 acres if you and your sole discretion determine that there's not an adverse impact, maybe that would be a way to address some of these concerns you're talking about and still maintain what I think very prudent is setting a standard at larger parcels. I don't know if that's, I don't want to tell you what to do, but that's an idea.
I think that's a very helpful idea.
Might solve some of that.
Councilmember Jacob.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with some of what has been mentioned about the list of amenities. I'm having WSPA flashbacks, Scott, if you'll recall performance-based zoning and all of that. You know, well, my swimming pool is 10 square feet larger than required, so I get 6 extra points and 2 extra units on my, you know what I mean? I don't like that idea. I think that should be a little more, a little less specific maybe in here, and a little more up to the developer to decide what amenities that they want to put in, and not have to pick from a list, but they can come to us with something. I mean, the whole point of a PC zone, right, or at least a large part of it, is to encourage imaginative uses. Let's let the developer use their imagination and come to us, and then we can evaluate those on a case-by-case basis as we approve development plans and things. I don't like having the list and the suggestions, because I think that'll narrow the thinking too much, and that's not what we want to do in a PC zone. That's what we want to avoid in a PC zone. So in my opinion, I think we need to take out that section of suggested amenities based on residential count units and anywhere else that it is in there. Just something to think about.
Councilmember Burton.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I want to thank Rob Wall for his comments. It's a good thing we have you here. I'm in line with that. If we did that, then I wouldn't be so concerned about having that 200-acre count in there. In fact, because I like the idea of having that variety in smaller lots of 50, 75, or whatever. So I would be in favor of changing the wording on that to meet that. So I think his wording was online.
Councilmember Anderson.
Yeah, I just want to follow up. Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to follow up with Rob's comment, because I think I heard Scott saying that he wanted to have kind of not a baseline, but kind of a concrete number to work with. And with Rob's comment, does that work with this 200 acres, but we can still do it on our discretion?
Yeah, so I was going off of the summary sheet on page 2 of your staff report, but if you look at the legislative proposed change, 13.5C-5, the paragraph that Mr. Wall just read, if we adopted his proposed language, it would give you the flexibility, but it would also have a general target. So when we sit down, we could have that discussion. So
Okay.
I think it's a good marriage of both concepts.
Okay, that's all I have. I like it. Thank you, Mayor.
Well, I have regarding the amenities on there, if we don't, how would it be suggested that they include amenities then, if we don't specify any? How would you do that?
So the way the current PC zone is, it's basically whatever density the council feels appropriate versus the amenities the council feels appropriate. It's pretty wide open right now. You know, Larry's down in the trenches every day, and he's trying to negotiate and trying to guess what is that proper balance as best he can, so that when it gets to the planning commission, to the city council, that it's not too far out in left field. And so I think this is Larry's attempt at narrowing it down for a little bit, but I agree that for those of you who did not experience the West Side planning area, there is a very specific menu of options, of amenities, and it got down to, you know, you get a certain amount of extra density for a park bench, and it got we got buried in the weeds real quick, and it was just hard to administer. So perhaps Mr. Gardner was trying to strike that balance. I think they do a good job already, and so I personally wouldn't have any heartburn if the council decided to take that out.
So if you take it out, they could submit a subdivision plat with no amenities?
No.
No, they would have to, the council would not have to agree to that if you felt that there needed to be a park or a clubhouse or pool or whatever it may be, it would be up to your discretion.
Okay, Councilmember Burton.
No, Chris.
Actually,
Oh,
McConaughey.
sorry,
was
Chris has got his hand up. Go ahead, Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. I like having a list to start with, and I know staff is going to hate me for this, but what if we were to add one more item to the list saying, basically giving the developer the option to propose something of a similar value to the community at large to be approved by the city council. That way we've kind of given them some ideas suggesting, well, these are the types of things that we're looking for, trails, playgrounds, things like that to benefit the community at large, or if you wanted to propose something else, please do, but it's up to the council's discretion after planning commission approval or recommendation whether or not that would be acceptable.
Thank you. Now, Councilmember Burton.
Thank you, Mayor. Isn't that the last item on the list already, that they can make up their own, but we'd have to approve it? So I would recommend changing it instead of having a requirement of the first couple of them, that they are suggested ones, but whatever they are, it has to be approved by them. Leave that last paragraph in there. Would that work, Councilman McConaughey?
You know, as soon as you said that, I had not read that last bullet correctly, so no, exactly what I suggested is right there. They were just, I'm not sure if they were reading my mind or if I spent enough time with them that I'm starting to think the same way as them, but no, I'm actually happy with this. I'm okay with the list. I just like to pull out those things that are HOA specific.
Okay, so take the HOA specific ones off. Instead of having it required, make it as a suggestion. These are some ideas, but whatever you come up with is fine. Whatever it is, we have to approve.
Any further comment? Okay, Councilmember McConaughey.
Going along with what Councilmember Burton said, maybe tweaking the language a little bit so that instead of requiring two from the following list, we just say proposing the PC zone that element of the following list to be included. For every 500 unit elements of the list, so we're not really restricting it, but we're not saying you have to do at least two, and getting them to focus on the minimum. I don't know if that would help or hinder, but just a thought.
Councilmember Whitelock.
I just want to reiterate what Chris said about, I think these amenities should be for the community at large and not a clubhouse or something that's just used within an HOA. I would appreciate that more.
Does anybody dare to make a motion then?
Well, we can bring it back next week.
That's what I was going to suggest.
Is that the motion?
I would ask staff if they have enough kind of direction from the conversation to take a stab at a redo, and not a complete redo, but a tweak, and bring it back. Do you think you have enough?
I think we've got some good discussion and direction today, yes.
Okay. So I would suggest that be the course of action, unless there's any opposed.
Is everybody in favor of doing that then?
Yes.
Yes. There's a lot of nods. Everybody say aye?
Aye.
Any opposed to that? Thank you.
Aye.
So with that...
all in favor vote, I'm just going to raise my hand instead of saying aye or nay.
Okay, Scott, I think you've got some directions. Is that enough for you? Okay. All right, we'll move to business item 9A. Discussion and possible action regarding resolution 19-42, approving improvements to the 6400 West, 7800 South, and Fallwater Drive, 7800 South intersections. And it's got Nate's name on here, so Nate?
Well, Nate's coming up. I'll cue up the PowerPoint, but we are excited that we have the opportunity to talk to the council today. Gateways into communities aren't necessarily at the borders of municipalities, and 7800 South and Mountain View Corridor, in our estimation, is a true gateway into our community, and that's why we wanted to bring this before you today.
Okay, well, good evening. I appreciate the opportunity to come to you and talk to you about this item. As you know, we're requesting council direction or approval of 2 roundabout intersections, one at Firewater Drive and one at 6400 West, both on 7800 South. In order to really set the stage on this, we need to look at it and not just as 2 isolated intersections, but we really need to look at it as a corridor. And the corridor that we want to focus on is this area between the Highlands Loop Road, which is where the Smiths is, and 6400 West. Now that piece of that piece of road is only 0.8 miles long, 0.8 of a mile long, and there's a lot going on in this section of road. I'll just kind of point it out. Right now, about halfway between the Loop Road and Mountain View Corridor, there's a very high probability that we're going to end up putting a traffic light right here at some point in time. As much as we don't like it and we don't like the spacing, it's the main entryway into Copper Rim development, and that's a development that's got about 800 lots and 38 acres of commercial retail development. So it's looking like there's probably going to be a traffic light there or some kind of traffic control there. Then we've got the Mountain View Corridor that's got its pair of traffic lights, and then the 2 intersections that we're considering tonight. So in all, in that 0.8 of a mile, we've got potential for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 traffic lights. And with that, it gives you that kind of a feel of lights, industrialization. Go ahead.
I just have a question. Once Mountain View is a freeway, will you still have 2 lights there?
As far as I know, yes.
There still will be.
The only way you couldn't is if it was a single point interchange, and that's not in their plan to build that type of a interchange, as far as I know.
Thank you.
Unless you know something different than I do.
Just the fact that every interchange they've built in the last 10 years is one of those. I don't see them not doing that.
Okay. I'd have to check on that. I don't know for sure on that one. But along with that, just the fact that it's a congested intersection, it's also a convergence of several trails. We've got the Mountain View Corridor Trail that runs along the corridor. We've also got we've also got the Clay Hollow Wash Trail that runs through here and joins up with that. And we have an opportunity to do some things here that can kind of mitigate the traffic and the congestion in that area. One is we're fortunate that we've got, in most of this area, we've got 150 feet right-of-way, a range between 130 to 150 feet of right-of-way, which gives us room for a little bit more landscaped enhancements on the sides, wider sidewalks or trails, multi-use trails. We're proposing 10-foot multi-use trails to be along most of that area. And I think that we'll kind of zoom in on this a little bit. Again, I just want to point out that here at Firewater Drive, there's a future road that will extend to the north from that, so that will be a 4-way intersection at some point in the future as we get more development to the north. Just zooming in a little bit, just want to highlight again, this doesn't necessarily hinge on whether we do roundabouts or intersections. We just kind of want to look at the corridor for a second and show you some of the possibilities that we have and that we've kind of planned out here. But we've gone ahead and looked at the points of access. We've got this business here lined up where we've got the Think Storage lined up with the future road into Copper Rim. We've got business accesses kind of planned out so that we don't get too many different kinds of driveways and business accesses. Just want to focus on this intersection here now, that the two intersections that we're looking at, roundabouts. Again, we see the opportunity to have enhanced landscape medians and enhanced landscaping along the sides in the wider park strips. Landscape medians, it'll give it a nice parkway feel, kind of a gateway. We talked about the trails. There were several things that we've kind of learned from talking to City Council and from some of the residents. And Councilman Jacob, we've looked on your Facebook posting and read some of the public comments, and you got a lot there, by the way. It was very nice. But several of the common themes that we got was that a lot of people feel like the roundabouts that we have are too small, they're too tight. They're uncomfortable to drive, confusing for people who maybe not be real familiar with driving roundabouts, and difficult for pedestrians. So several of the things we've been able to do, I think, in this corridor plan to account for that is, one, these two roundabouts are larger than any other roundabout that we've done in the city. They're 200 feet in diameter, whereas the current one that we have at the Loop Road is about 180 feet. I'll show you a picture of a 200-foot diameter roundabout here in just a second, but it is wider. It gives drivers a little bit more time to assess the traffic that's coming and to negotiate it.
Nate, can you mention or refer the roundabouts in Daybreak? We get brought up a lot as in comparisons, the ones on the north side of the lake and on the south side of the lake. How big are those in diameter?
I think the biggest one, and Bill could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they're 220. Where'd he go? 220.
Okay. So we're talking still a little bit.
They're not as big, but they're bigger than what we've got elsewhere. Okay. Also, we want to do better at the pedestrian facilities, especially where pedestrians have to cross 2 lanes of traffic. And so one thing we want to do there is create crosswalks and actually have the pedestrian-operated beacons so that they can hit the button, get a flashing light, and it just really calls out to drivers that there's a pedestrian in the intersection, and it enhances safety by quite a bit. Also, by having the roundabouts, it gives us opportunities to do little community enhancements, either monuments or displays or some kind of welcome sign and that sort of thing. So this is just kind of you can't really see it on this slide, but maybe you can see it on your screens. But in that case, whoops, there's a kind of a monument wall that goes around with the city's name on it. So it's kind of those things that you can do to just kind of increase a gateway road and add to the feel of it. Just kind of in summary, why roundabouts on 7800 South? You've heard us talk about roundabouts in general. There's a number of things. You know, it's slow volume, there's slow speeds, fewer conflict points, low impact angles if there are accidents. You know, there are a lot of safety reasons for roundabouts. The accidents that may occur in those tend to be much less severe than accidents at traffic lights. Also, we just want to point out that you know, being a commercial corridor, it facilitates easy U-turns, so people that need to turn around to get into a right-in, right-out driveway or business, perhaps they can make an easy turnaround. There's efficiency in traffic. In fact, I thought it was interesting when the resident commented in the citizen comments, he was concerned about the traffic light causing a backup into the roundabout and not the other way around. So generally we see the roundabouts keep traffic moving, and then the queues are less and better, more efficient at moving the traffic. And just the reduced number of signalized intersections. Like I say, it's a very busy corridor. So that concludes what I wanted to discuss. I will just show you, there's a picture of a roundabout that's in South Jordan. It's on Riverfront Parkway, and it's a 180-foot diameter, or 200-foot diameter, excuse me, and it's got 4 lanes in the north-south direction and 2 lanes in the east-west direction, and seems to work very well. That concludes. If you have any questions, I just want you to know that regardless of your decision, we respect that, and we'll move forward according to what your desires are.
Councilmember Jacob.
Thank you, Mayor. Scott, if you could, can you bring up Google Maps? Thanks, bud. Or the city info map, either one would work. I just want to look a little further down 7800 South to the east. And just one thing, as a gateway to the city, I love the idea. However, I don't really see this as a gateway to the city. It's 7800 South is kind of smack in the middle of the city. Mountain View Corridor is kind of a gateway to the city, about a mile north of this and about a mile and a half south of this, but not right here. So I'm not seeing that. Maybe I'm just not feeling it. I don't know what it is. Thanks. Yeah, move to the east, if you would, sir. Other east. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Other side of 56. Keep on going down, maybe down around Swiftwater Way, and there's Swiftwater and 5200 West, not Grizzly, in between. There's 2 intersections here that require neither a light nor a roundabout. There's that one, and then, an inch to your right there, there's 5200 West. And then if you go even further to the east, there's former Councilmember Nichols might shoot me, but there's the one in front of his house right there, and the next one down as well that also do not have a roundabout. And it looks like the one there on 4950 West looks like it's, slated to have a street go south into that would-be commercial development. By the way, I met with the president of Lucky yesterday, or met with him yesterday, much of us did, and he forgot that he had this property out here, so Paul Coates is reminding him. In any case, it looks like that's a potential 4-way intersection there, also without a roundabout. Yet these neighborhoods have existed here for 15 years, maybe 20, mid to late 90s, I think is when most of these were built. And life has continued as we know it, and 78th has gotten wider. 78th was 2 lanes here, and now it's 4 lanes here. And we're doing just fine. I personally 100% agree with what Mr. Smith said, Matt Smith, when he was here commenting, the citizen that commented. I think at 6400 West you can make the argument. I think that's enough of a collector road north-south. You can make the argument. The Fallwater Drive one, which by the way is not on this map, but it is on our city map. There you go. Google kind of penciled it in. That one you have a harder case for, in my opinion, especially as we don't have a concept plan or even a zoning plan for the property to the north yet. We don't know what that's going to look like, what that's going to be. We don't know if a roundabout's going to be required. You already got half of one built there. I don't think we need a roundabout at that one. I can make the argument at 6400 West being a much more already established collector road on each side of 78th. I can see that one a little bit. But again, and that's only, that's 0.2 of a mile from there to Fallwater. I think it's awfully close together.
I agree with your assessment. If it was one or the other, 64 would definitely be the best candidate.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just think Fallwater's not there yet. I just don't see that.
One thing I didn't cover in my briefing was that fortunately we've got right of way, so that if we wanted to forego the roundabout now, it would be much easier to come back later and construct one if we ever had to or ever desired to. So a lot of the right of way is already been acquired along that corridor from various purchases or developer contributions.
Right, this map will show that right there. cute little stub. All right, so those are my comments. I would support the one at 6400 West at this point, and I would not support the one at Fallwater Drive at this point.
Councilmember Burton.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you explain to me how the bike routes will work through the roundabouts?
I do a lot of bike riding myself, and for me, I feel the safest when I just become a car. I get right in the lane, and I get behind a car, and I go right through
So
it.
the bike lane will end, and then it'll start again on the other
Yes.
side, and will become part of the lane?
Right. That's done through many of those, and I like to get right in the middle of the lane and become a car and be as big as I can, rather than hugging the side and trying to skirt my way.
There is no side to hug on those, right? And how will the pedestrians work through there then?
They'll stay on the sidewalks, and they'll come to crosswalks. Like I say,
Before the roundabout?
Yes, on the legs of the roundabout.
Like what we have right here?
Yes. And on the east-west ones, we're proposing that we put in those beacons, the pedestrian-activated beacons that give the flashing lights, where they have to cross two lanes.
And I don't know if this is better or worse, but you can look at it and see. Look at St. George on some of their roundabouts, what they do with their bike lanes when they get there. They actually have a separate lane outside the roundabout that skirts it, that comes back to the road afterwards.
Okay.
But it takes more space, which means it takes more money. And I understand where you're coming about with it being the entrance to the city. If someone's driving down Mountain View Corridor from Salt Lake City, they're getting off into West Jordan, that's going to be their reverse view.
That's kind of what we had in mind.
And I understand where that would come from. Thank you.
Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. I kind of started this whole thing on roundabouts a couple years ago. I am appreciative that they are wider, the 200 foot diameter. The concern initially that I had when I helped get the ordinance to the city was it seemed like we were just putting a lot of roundabouts, in my opinion, for the sake of putting in roundabouts. It has nothing to do with the safety or the efficiency, those kind of things. Several cities that I've checked with back then actually allow roundabouts except on arterial streets. So I'm glad that we can review each of these and look at them on a case-by-case basis. 6700 is a traffic signal.
Correct.
It's going to be.
Soon.
Any day now. So it's a struggle. I think Councilmember Jacob brought up that there's a number of intersections on a busy street that can do it without roundabouts. He had some that he listed, and if I'm reading this chart right, 19,000 ADT would be the traffic count. So it's 19,000 cars, assuming that point is east of Mountain View Corridor.
Correct.
And going west of Mountain View Corridor, we have, according to this sheet, 13,000 traffic count, so a difference of about 6,000 cars west. And yet we're putting all the traffic circles on the west side, and we have all these neighborhoods on the east side that don't. So I struggle with the need. I do agree with Councilmember Jacob that I don't know that I would support a roundabout at Fallwater Drive at this point in time. I kind of would like to see, kind of like what you had mentioned, whether UDOT puts a SPUI in at Mountain View as they convert that to a freeway and see what that does. But everything is just so congested right there. So it's, I don't know.
Okay. Again, we have kind of an opportunity on the west side that we didn't have before, where we've got new development. But again, you know, I think we'd be perfectly fine to hold that one, you know, for later and see what happens.
Yeah, because I just worry that UDOT comes and says, hey, we're going to finish the intersection there, and you have to rip out that roundabout. They have to do something else to get out because it's too close. We've seen that when they've redone 90th, where they've rerouted neighborhood streets. They're already rerouting some streets Dixie Drive on 6200 South to accommodate, and I realize that that's a little closer, but this is a lot of interfacing onto an arterial street, as you mentioned, probably within a mile on either side, or with Mountain View being at the half-mile mark, so half mile or 3/4 of a mile on either side. There's just a lot of interruptions to the traffic flow with ingress and egress.
Right.
So,
as I recall, and I could be wrong here, but my understanding, the way I remember it, is the Mountain View corridors that goes through this section, what they've built is the frontage roads. So there will be a road. Is that not right?
there's no frontage road.
Okay, so maybe it is a SPUI there in the future.
Those are the off-ramp, on-ramps. There is no frontage road in West Jordan. So, all right, that's all I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Lamb.
Thank you, Mayor. I think one thing I've heard many times is our fire trucks and our plows have a hard time with these roundabouts. Well, there's a fire station right there at that roundabout. And has there been discussion with the fire chief or anybody if that roundabout at that section would be a problem for our fire trucks?
We haven't sat down with the fire chief and discussed it directly, but one thing we do want to do is, if we can get that, but we've got where you come out of that fire station, and first of all, there are roundabouts all over the city, so it wouldn't be really any different. But where fire trucks come straight out of that intersection, out of their fire station, and turn right and try to go through that first roundabout that they would encounter, we've got a kind of a bypass lane planned in there, so that if it's high traffic or somebody freezes up or whatever, there's room for a fire truck to get around them.
Yeah, so that'd be my main worry about that. Now, I do think that is it already is a busy intersection. So I do think something needs to be done there, whether roundabout's the answer or not. But I do worry because typically the fire trucks, when they come out that way, they're probably heading east. And going around that roundabout, it's not going to hurt time-wise, and I don't think we have the larger trucks out at that station, correct?
Yeah, right now we don't have any, we don't have our ladder truck out of there, which is the longest. With the one that we've got ordered, it's actually a tractor-driven tiller, and so it can steer in the back. It can actually navigate really tight turns. That being said, the size of this one, I don't think making the turns in a fire engine would be too difficult.
Okay.
My only concern is, like you mentioned, if the traffic were to back up, there's not really anywhere for the backed up traffic to get out of the way as fire trucks come in. But again, with it being a roundabout, the traffic flow would probably just continue right around the roundabout and be okay.
Okay. And I know today we're not going to say go put in the roundabout tomorrow. This is more about planning. So as we put in our planning hats here, let's just make sure that we get with the fire chief and the firefighters and just make sure that it's going to fit, because a station's not going away. I mean, it tried to sink into the ground. It tried, but it's going to be there for a long time, and so we want to make sure our trucks are able to get around that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Whitelock.
So can you pull up that map again? The one that you had up prior to this visual. Is it possible to funnel these people like all to one of the lights? Are these absolutely necessary to have intersections there? Because I agree with Councilman Jacobs. I mean, I have two ways in and out of my subdivision, and they both enter or exit, whatever you want to, egress and ingress. They're both onto 9,000 South, right by Bangerter. So it's possible. I do it daily. So it's just, is it a true need to have so many intersections along this area?
Well, we've generally put them based on the road classification, which are, where you intersect a collector with an arterial road. So typically the volume on the collectors would warrant it, at least, maybe a few years in the future when there's more developer, but the collectors generally run the length of the city, and in adjoining cities are not, just neighborhood roads. They're actual pass-through roads running north and south.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Does anybody want to attempt a motion tonight on this issue? Councilmember Jacob.
Yeah, I'll attempt a motion on this issue. I'm going to pull it up, though. So, we have Resolution 19-42. Let me get to the resolution, see if there's anything we need to change. I would move to approve Resolution 19-42 with the following change. Under the first whereas, I'm going to go slow for our typist. Strike the words "and Fallwater Drive / 7800 South intersection." So it just reads, amend current plans for the 6400 West, 7800 South intersection to become a roundabout intersection. And then under the first therefore, the same thing. Ending after the first intersection word and striking "and at the Fallwater Drive 7800 South intersection." So basically, the motion is to approve the roundabout at 6400 West and not the other one at this point. That doesn't mean keep installing half of it.
Councilmember Anderson.
It's not approved.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion by Councilmember Jacob, a second by Councilmember Anderson. Discussion to the motion. Councilmember Lamb.
Let's try that motion one more time. Can we, without the strikes and the verses, what is the full motion going to be?
I think if you could probably just read this, that I move to adopt
With no discussion of the other one?
Listen, I move to adopt Resolution 19-42, authorizing staff to plan for a roundabout at 6400 West, 7800 South. Period.
That's it.
Period.
Okay.
What he said.
Let's vote.
Councilmember Burton?
Aye.
Mayor Whiting?
Yes.
Councilmember Jacob?
Yes.
Councilmember McConaughey?
No.
Councilmember Whitelock?
No.
Councilmember Lamb?
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson?
Yes.
The vote passes 5-2 in favor.
So we are on to business item 9B, discussion and possible action regarding Resolution 19-21.
Mayor, you have Councilman McConaughey raising his hand.
Councilmember McConaughey, you got your hand up. Sorry.
Thank you. I just want to make a quick comment to the motion. Although I was in opposition, I do want to thank staff because it was nice to hear that our concerns have been listened to and responded to with what has been proposed. I didn't quite feel like it got far enough of the way there for me to be supported, but I really do appreciate them taking the time to listen and try and accommodate some of the concerns that we heard previously. So thank you for down for that despite my no vote.
Thank you. Okay, we're on 9B, discussion and possible action regarding Resolution 19-21, updating the council rules, policies, and procedures to require one. In fact, let me just read what this changes. It's regarding city council sponsors. Many agenda items are initiated by council members. At least one council member is required to place a discussion, presentation, procedural motion, or other non-action item on the council agenda. A minimum of 2 council members are required to place a resolution on regular business item on the council agenda. A minimum of 3 council members are required to place an ordinance on the council agenda. The names of these council members shall be identified in the request for council action report. Once the council agenda is posted, council members may no longer remove or add agenda items. So with that, let's move to discussion. Councilmember Burton.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, that very last sentence, council members may no longer remove or add agenda items. I think that needs to be worded quite differently. That sounds like once it's on there, you can't add any more or take anything else off.
It just says once it's posted.
That's what it said. Once it's posted, But that doesn't say you can't add another agenda item. It just says you can't add any more, and you can't take anything off.
And that's true, because we did that on this agenda tonight.
Okay. So, but it's not talking about just when you post it, it's talking about anything else. It's
So-
just covering everything. It's
So do
you
you
can't add
want
it
to
to-
remove that last sentence? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yes, take that last sentence off. Also, I don't want to be redundant, but I still would be opposed to having 2 required to place a resolution, and especially the 3 required to do an ordinance. So I'm so opposed to the way that's written.
Councilmember Jacob.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree the minimum of 3 for the ordinance. I think that's kind of interesting. Why we need 3 for an ordinance, but 2 for a resolution or business item, but 3 for an ordinance. I don't know where the 3 for the ordinance came from. So I'd be in favor of striking everything after the 2 council members required to place a resolution or regular business item on the council agenda, and maybe adding ordinance into that sentence and striking everything beyond that. Other than that, I'm kind of okay with it, more or less.
Okay, let's, Councilmember McConaughey, hold on just a second. I'm going to ask Mr. Murray if he'd come up and explain where the 3 came from on that one.
Well, last time you mentioned that you wanted different levels of approval, and so I just took a stab at it with 1 council member if it's a basic procedural item, and 2, and if it was a business item. But I was just throwing some options out there. If you don't want the 3 option, we could just put it so it's resolution, ordinance, or regular business item would be 2 members.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. And this may be for Rob. I'm just trying to think of times when we don't. I think we can get accused of politics if we keep coming up with amended agendas, and that's one thing in the back of my mind when we have amended agendas, and I realize that last minute things come up that I get concerned that we change. I don't see that in a lot of other cities. Once the agenda is posted, it's pretty well done. So my question is there any risk to the council with the last sentence that says once the council agenda is posted, council members may no longer remove or add agenda items?
The law would allow the agenda to be amended, the posted agenda to be amended, only if it occurs 24 hours before the meeting.
Right.
Now, once you're in the meeting, if you want to amend the agenda to discuss an item, for example, you can, but you can't take a final action because you haven't posted it 24 hours in advance. So that would be the legal restriction, whether that sentence is in there or not.
Because I would like and this is kind of a bigger 30,000-foot view. I use that a lot, but I would like once the agenda is posted, we kind of know what we're working on. It gives time for the public to see what business we're going to work on. But I do worry about the may no longer remove. Kind of indicates that we don't want you to, but you may, as opposed to shall. So I don't know with the word may in there, I don't know the benefit of that last sentence, but I do wish that we would be less amendable. And then I'm also, I think, just having to, I think when the mayor and I talked about this, I think the idea was that if we're going to spend time having the dialogue up here on the dais and using the public time and our time and staff time, that there's an idea of a potential motion and a potential second to have that dialogue. We had problems with that with prior councils where a single individual could add, remove, and just kind of jump all over, and motions would get passed and there was no motion. We don't have the opportunity to circle things like legislators do. So those are kind of my thoughts. I think I do like having the 2 council members. I do agree with Councilmember Jacob that I don't know that we need the 3 council members for an ordinance. And the last sentence, I see the benefit of it, but I don't know that that's what we need to do. I'd just like us to not amend it as much as we seem to sometimes. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Whitelock.
So maybe just a question. In some areas of this, it seems that we've tried to update it for the new form of government. But then other areas, not so much. Like on 4, it still refers to the city manager and mayor and what they're going to be doing. And so if we're going to change it, maybe we should get it to the point that it's ready for the new form of government. And my question would be how does that work? What's that going to look like in this new form of government? Because it's really the council's agenda. It's no longer the mayor and city manager's agenda, right?
Right. So I did not work on this rule revision with the change of government in mind. My understanding of the direction from the council was that we were going to do that at the tail end of the process after the city code received all of its changes for the change in government. It is such a dramatic change to go from your council rules under this form to a new form that one other option you might want to consider is to go to a similarly sized city, whether it's Provo or whatever that has the same form of government, and look to the future of maybe using something closer to their rules than something close to what you're doing now. In other words, your shift would be so dramatic to try to change your current rules to be rules for the future in the new form of government. You'd probably be much closer and make many fewer changes if you were to find a model city and use that as a template. You'd literally be amending almost every sentence otherwise, and it might be kind of complicated. But until you've given me a direction one way or the other, I haven't really made changes for the form of government other than I think I did make one change on paragraph.
Well, in 3 there is. That's why I'm asking, is because we did it in some places and not others. So.
Yeah. But I can do it however you want me to do it. My thought was, other than something that was glaringly had to be fixed, I wasn't going to make changes for the change of form of government yet with the rules.
And I guess I'm okay. I like continuity and things. I'm kind of a science person, so when you make a change in one area, then that tells my brain that we should change the other areas. So I'm okay.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. So 2 thoughts. First of all, where it says at least one council member is required to place discussion, presentation, procedural motion, or other non-action items on the council agenda, that can be read as if we can't have a presentation without a council member, we can't have discussion without a council member. I think that whole line should be stripped. The line right here at the end, once the council agenda is posted, council members may no longer add or remove agenda items. There's 2 thoughts with that. Number one, it was brought up, it does prohibit us from making any changes when we could otherwise amend. But at the same time, the part that I'm more concerned about is the ability to remove items from the agenda. For example, even on today's agenda, we have an item on here, business item 9E, that has my name associated with it, that really shouldn't have my name on there. So I'm saying this hypothetically, but we've seen it before. If I wanted to be a jerk and say, you know what, I don't want to talk about this item, let's remove it, that would force another council member to bring it back at a later council meeting to discuss the item that really should have one of their names associated with it. So I want to make sure that there's some sort of precaution that precludes things from just being unilaterally removed, but still gives a little bit of flexibility. Overall, I want to highlight what Mr. Murray said. We need to go through all of our council rules and procedures. We've spent a lot of time talking about how we're going to talk and how we're going to interact with each other. and not actually taking care of the business of the city, because we've been looking at the world, how we're going to try and talk back and forth. With this council and the remaining time that we have in that form of government, I'm comfortable proceeding with the handshake agreement that we've discussed of having two people and making sure that there's support for something before it goes on the agenda, rather than spending additional staff time or council time. I mean, even when we talk here in council, there are members of staff who have to be here as we do so. I would prefer not have any motion, not have any changes, and just move on until we come back and revisit the council rules in their entirety, so we're not fixing piece by piece or spending an inordinate amount of time on something like this.
Second.
Councilmember Burton.
I agree completely with what Councilman McConaughey said. I think we have spent more time on this in our benefit, and I'm ready to move on and just leave it like it is until we make our final changes.
And if Councilmember Anderson is okay, I will recommend that we just pull this and have it be part of the complete rewrite of the rules, policies, and procedures in anticipation of the change of government later in this year. Any objections to that from anybody? Okay, we will move on to item 9C. Discussion of possible action regarding Resolution 19-43, authorizing expenditure of $90 for registration, allowing Councilmember Burton to attend the 2019 Utah Bike Summit held March 5th. Councilmember Burton and McConaughey. Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. There's been a little bit back and forth on this one. This is the one that we discussed last council meeting, saying it needed to be agendized. After some clarification with the city attorney, he said, no, based on the way the rules are written, that pertains primarily to travel. This isn't travel, so it could be approved. We did approve it. And then in some back and forth with Jamie issues putting the agenda together, it still got included, but it wasn't until it was too late to withdraw that it was realized that this was no longer necessary. So this would have been one of those legitimate removals I would have requested.
That it? Okay, Councilmember Whitelock.
So do we need to take action on this since it's here?
No, we did last time. It's already done. This is redundant.
Right, but I'm looking for Mr. Walls.
I would just do a verbal motion indicating that that's why you're not going to take action.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all in favor of not taking action?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, we will move to the next item. 9D, discussion of possible action regarding Resolution 19-44, setting forth the terms of office of elected official in the city of West Jordan under the council mayor form of government. Council members Jacob and McConaughey. Councilmember Jacob.
Thank you, Mayor. I've talked to, I think we kind of talked about this before. We mentioned it briefly in the last meeting that we had with the park. This is basically, I skipped to the wrong staff report, excuse me. This is just tweaking the terms of office that we will have in the city going forward. The way that the resolution was written to put the form of government change on the ballot, set forth some terms on a table that made every council member or every council seat except for the new at-large seat to have to be a 2-year term at one point or another. Also, it had 6 council members up for election at the same time in 2021, which I think was not in agreement with the spirit of the law in changing the form of government, that says that your council terms should be staggered. Approximately half the council should be up for election at any given time. Council terms should be 4 years, except for as necessary to introduce the new positions. So I wrote this up in about 10 minutes. It was great, and the attorneys liked it, which is even better. And I submit it. So what this basically does, just for anybody who's listening, is it says that council member terms that are up this year for election will be 4 years, as they have been for the last eternity since we adopted this form of government. that the council at-large positions continue through the term if they choose to, or I guess if either at-large council member opted out of continuing their term, that election would be for 2 years, but that's already provided for in state code to, that it would just be the remainder of their term. So that's not in this resolution. All it does is say the new at-large council member will be a 2-year term to match up with the other at-large council members, and that's it. That's basically it. It's just the simplest and easiest way to move forward with continuity, with keeping some sort of institutional continuity, so you don't have an entirely new council in 2021, save one. Although that sometimes can still happen, with resignations and things, but we want to avoid it as much as possible. So that's just what this does. It's pretty basic. I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has any questions. Yeah. There you go.
I agree and support this. I thought I thought through this last year and thought there's got to be a different and better way to try to resolve this issue. I talked to Senator Harper, talked to Cameron Deal, the ELCT, to see if there are ways in which we can do this. And so I really appreciate Councilmember Jacob coming up with this idea, because to me this is a very simple and easy way to resolve this situation, to eliminate all those 2-year terms coming up. And the only caveat I think we have out there is if the Lieutenant Governor's office approves this idea. And so, David, do you have a comment, I guess, about that?
I do. The legal department did prepare a legal opinion. It is not included in the documents because it is your opinion to, at some point, release. I can't even talk about the opinion without disclosing some of what the details of that legal opinion is. There is language that preserves the privilege that you as council have with that legal opinion. I wanted to just ask you, we can forward the opinion to you, but we'd ask that you not forward it to anyone else. It's just for you to review and understand what we have shared with the Lieutenant Governor's office about this concept. And at a later meeting, if you should vote to determine to release that privilege, then you can give it to whomever. But it's one of the reasons that it has not been provided to you. It was provided to me as the executive chief of the city, and I felt that based on that opinion, I was comfortable sending it to the Lieutenant Governor's office. There's language that protects us and the city generally about what it is they have, but it will, I think, support the resolution that has been suggested.
So even if we approve it this evening, it's dependent upon the opinion of the Lieutenant Governor's office. Is that correct?
They have been provided, I believe yesterday, it was sent to the Lieutenant Governor's office. We would like Mr. Wall, when he's up at the Capitol either tomorrow or Friday during the session, to just walk over to the Lieutenant Governor's office, let Lieutenant Governor Cox's staff know, you've got our opinion and the council has acted. We'd like a confirmation back as soon as possible.
Thank you. Councilmember Burton.
Thank you, Mayor. Having been the co-maker of that original draft, I can tell you I have no objections to this other wording, this new wording that we have before us.
Councilmember Lamb.
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to let Councilmember Burton know I didn't like that draft anyway. But it passed. However, I've always felt that when I voted, and I wasn't on the council when I voted, that I was voting for the change of government. I wasn't voting for the terms. My question with Ricky would be, when we set those terms, were they sent to the state, as in this is when we're going to do our election, or is it just set here in the city?
The resolution was sent.
So the resolution that we created said 2-2-2-2. How many years those were? Did we send it to the state and say this is how we're doing it now?
We did. In fact, there was an attached exhibit. It was part of the voter information pamphlet. It was a fairly definitive attempt to tell everybody what they were going to get if you made this change of government.
Okay. So if this is to be done, obviously we'll vote on it here, and if it does pass, do we then have to put together a pamphlet again to send back out to people to let them know of those terms?
No, you will not. You'll just have the voter information pamphlet that will identify your 4 districts and the mayor race.
Okay.
And at large.
So the last thing for Melanie would be, obviously, those who are going to run this year, it's important that we let them know that, number one, all the 4 districts will be 4 years, and then if you're running for at large, the new one, it's only 2 years. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Jacob.
Thank you, Mayor. Just as a kind of sidebar to that, we've gone to the Lieutenant Governor's office with this issue before, and there's been some interaction between the Attorney's office here and the Lieutenant Governor's office, and maybe we can recap that really quickly, because from what I heard, they said something along the lines of, do whatever you want, we're not going to act unless you do something wrong, or something in that vein.
They took sort of a judicial approach to saying, until there's an actual conflict, you're asking for a predetermination of what your council should do. We're not comfortable giving advice to your council. That's what your lawyer is supposed to do. So now that that was made clear, the legal department has made advice to me, and I think this is the right resolution to suggest to you all to accomplish that 4-year cycle, putting the mayor back on a 4-year cycle, rather than stretching it out over 3 elections. It got kind of convoluted the other way.
Right, and I'll just point out that when people vote on things, it doesn't mean that the lawmaking is done, as we have seen at the legislature this year in spades. So,
Councilmember Whitelock. Well, first off, Rob Wall, you've got your...
Yeah, I was just going to add one thing. There are very limited ways that this can be challenged, and one of them could be the Lieutenant Governor, and they don't like to weigh in. They like to defer to your discretion. So that's why their process is that they won't give legal advice, as Mr. Brickey said. They'll give an opinion about what our opinion is, and that's what they're doing. And the only caution I give is that maybe before we disseminate anything in terms of notice to voters and candidates, the Lieutenant Governor is pretty quick at getting back to cities when they have these election questions once the city has submitted its opinion. So I'm hoping that we'll hear, within the next 4 or 5 days. They did tell Mr. Murray that they distributed it the day they got it, and that they would act quickly because they know that you are either going to vote on it tonight or you're going to vote on it really soon, is what they conveyed to Mr. Murray. Is that right, Duncan? Don't want to miss, yeah.
Okay, Councilmember Whitelock.
Unless Chad has more he wants to say. Go ahead, Jeff.
Councilmember Lamb.
So real quick, one question that I know that came up was the issue of the mayor and on the 4-year cycle. There was some question about whether or not we could be on that 4-year cycle because all the other cities are electing their mayors in 4 years from now, not 2 years from now. The majority. So are we okay to stay on that cycle with the new mayor with the 4 years?
We've made a legal argument to that effect. We would be unique. We would join Ogden and Salt Lake of having a mayor elected in an off time that other cities. So which would be appropriate. We're soon to be the 3rd largest city. It would be a nice distinction to have. But that is also one of the issues that the Lieutenant Governor's office will have to address.
Okay.
And if I could just add, traditional form of government cities are stuck with the one election cycle that they have to elect their mayor in. But if you're an alternative form of government, such as the strong mayor form of government, the statute's clear that it can be either election cycle, either the year before or the year after the presidential election.
Okay. So, perfect. Thank you.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. So my primary reason for supporting this is because from the perspective of the voters, this proposed change gives better balance to the voice of the voters during an election. If we continue with the way that we're set up, most of the representation will be elected during one election and then the minority the next. So, for example, from the perspective of the voter, if we have the 4-year terms that start next year, they would vote for both the mayor and their district representatives. So there's 2 people that they're voting for. and then 2 years down the road, they're going to vote for the at-large. So there'll be 3 seats they're voting for. So they're voting for 2 and then 3. If we don't change it, they're voting for 1 person in one election and then 4 people in the other. And if there's concerns with how the government is representing them, there's a disproportionate voice in one election where it's quieter than you would want, but then the other election that swings, and it's just out of balance. As Councilmember Jacob brought up, the idea is that you want to try and elect half of your representation with each election, and this change gets us back to that, where you're much more balanced with the representation that the residents are electing. So that's why I'm supportive of this resolution. Thank you.
Councilmember Whitelock.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion. I move to approve Resolution 1944, setting forth the terms of office of elected officials in the city.
We have a motion.
Second.
Jacob. A second. We have a motion by Councilmember Whitelock, a second by Councilmember Jacob. Discussion of the
I
motion.
tried to second that as well, but she was still talking. I didn't realize that was a pause.
Councilmember Whitelock.
I just want to thank Councilmember Jacobs for bringing this forward, because I just looked at that election and thought, this is not a good idea. So thank you.
Let's vote.
Okay. Councilmember Anderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Jacob.
Yes.
Mayor Whiting.
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb.
Yes.
Councilmember Burton.
Aye.
Councilmember Whitelock.
Yes.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Aye.
The vote passes 7 in favor.
Okay, item. We have, are you suggesting a break?
Depends on how long Rob's got. How much has he got?
There's 2 items left. So 9E, discussion of possible action regarding council members who may wish to travel to St. George for the Utah League of Cities and Towns 2019 mid-year conference. Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the one that shouldn't be under my name. This is the one where I saw the email from the administrative office saying who would like to attend, and I responded saying, please remember that any travel is required by council rules to be voted on by the council. I'm not supportive of this one, so that's why I was suggesting earlier that, if I didn't want to play nice, I would potentially pull this from the agenda, but I know there are those who are interested, so I'll turn it over to Councilmember Burton to talk about this instead.
Councilmember Burton.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councilman McConaughey, for playing nice. So, as comes up every year, the Utah League of Cities and Towns will be having their semi-annual conference in St. George, and it begins on a night that we have a council meeting, but that night is just a social evening and check-in. You can check in the next morning, and I would think it's beneficial for our city to have representation from our county, from our council to be there, and I think it's also beneficial for our county to be there, our council to be there, I apologize, to meet with other cities and councils and to receive training that is provided for us by the Utah League of Cities and Towns. I think it is good for our residents and good for our city, and I would be in favor, and I'd like to hear the comments of those who would be also in favor that we could vote on this to pay to send council members to this event.
Well, let me just ask a real quick question here. Councilmember Anderson, were you intending to go to the conference?
Yes.
Okay, Councilmember Jacob?
Probably yes.
Councilmember Whitelock?
If I can arrange things, yes.
Okay, Councilmember Lamb?
No.
Councilmember Burton?
Yes.
And Councilmember McConaughey? No. Okay, so personally, Councilmember Lamb, who is the Mayor Pro Tem, can take over if we have council meeting on that Wednesday night. I will not be here. I'm going to go down, drive down, so I will be gone.
Okay.
So with that, anybody else going to leave on Wednesday? So we'd have to have at least 4 people here on Wednesday night.
Before we get to that, can we discuss whether anybody should be going, which I think is the purpose of why this was brought up?
Oh.
Whether anybody should be going, and budget-wise, let's work out the logistics after we settle whether anybody's going. That makes sense.
I checked on the budget today. The budget's there to do it.
Okay.
So-
That's what I was going to bring up, is in the council office travel under our rule B4, this specific conference, along with the annual meeting and the National League in Washington, D.C., that question should be asked and answered during the budget cycle. It says the council budgets for travel by asking each council member at the beginning of the budget formulation process which conferences activities he or she desires to attend, including, and it mentions those 3 specifically, and the city manager will prepare cost estimates for the council office travel budget. So if we have a council office travel budget, I think we've already approved this.
It's because it was brought up last year.
Right.
When we did the budget about going, so that's what
It's just interesting that these 3 specific conferences, and there's other conferences, there's national conferences of city councils and municipal councils, other things that I hear about all the time, and I think, gosh, that'd be great to go to, but I'm not footing the bill because I don't have, the money to travel. But if the council, and I get asked, doesn't your council have a travel budget? And I say, well, we do and we don't, so. Anyway, it's interesting. These 3 are called out specifically, though, in our rules as to if you want to go, just speak up and go is kind of what I get is the intention of the rule there.
Chris.
Thank you, Mayor. And frankly, that's how it has been abused in the past. We had a couple folks on the council who said, well, we have travel budget, therefore we decided that we could travel during the budget process. It was used for things like going to Pomona to see car races under the auspices of trying to determine if this is something that we wanted to bring back to West Jordan. Air travel, hotels, none of that was brought back before the council body, which was not the purpose of the travel that had been allocated. Depending on how you read this, while some of the funds are set aside during the budget process, the interpretation of the last council after the issues and painful lessons learned was that if there's going to be travel, that could be brought up specifically who and when to make sure that the majority of the council is in favor so that we don't have a couple of folks using the argument, well, it's in the budget, therefore we can go.
Councilmember Lamb.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just wondering if we can waive fees in lieu of services for all that are going. I'm not going to say this. I think I understand why we want to go. I don't see a need to go. And in this past year and in previous years when I watched City Council, I never saw anything that came back that said, hey, we were there, we got this, we got that. So I would ask, if you guys want to go, I'm not going to fight it, but I would ask at least bring something back to show us and the citizens of why we're going. Just being there, I'm sorry, that's not a good reason to go. Just because what it looks like we're just taking a weekend in St. George. So I want to make sure if we're doing this, that we're doing it for a good reason and not just to be a part of it. That's all I'm saying.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. I like what Councilmember Lamb suggested. I'll be voting in opposition, but obviously there's more than enough support for it to carry. I feel like the league having 2 meetings, it seems like the purpose is to help make travel a little bit easier, so you don't have folks from either extreme of the state having to go that far, so they've got 2 of them. I feel that it's important for us to be involved during the annual meetings that they have in Salt Lake, but I don't feel the same way about the meetings in St. George. I'll cut my comments at that, but thank you.
Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. I attended last April and attended conferences on land use. I attended conferences on grandma or workouts or breakout sessions. On grandma requests, I attended a workshop on legal things. It's not legal things, but like legal needs for land use, just I'm not an attorney. And I attended that. They also had a speaker, and I can't remember, I think he was the mayor of Kansas City or somewhere in Missouri that spoke on some unique things that he was doing in their city. The city already pays a membership to the Utah League of Cities and Towns that helps us lobby up at the legislature. And if we're going to pay a membership, I would think that we would want to use it. And I'm not going to Pomona to see if we want to bring a racetrack to West Jordan. I'm going to be a better council member, is why I go to the Utah League Conference. They chose to have it in St. George. I take PTO time from my employer so that I can attend. And I would be happy to bring back the workshops that I attend. I go from first thing in the morning till late in the day. I'm able to network with other city officials, mayors, city council members, also business people, and construction companies. Layton Construction's been down there. Ace Disposal, Waste Management have been down, and I network with them. So I get information that helps me become a better council member. So that's why I'm supportive of going to these conferences, is because we can become better by attending these classes on better land use, new trends. Like I mentioned to Scott, I want to get out of Euclidean zoning, R18, R110, and get into these planned developments and planned communities, because I think that's the future for these larger parcels. So anyway, that's my 2 cents of why I think this is valuable, and I would be more than happy to report at a future council meeting after this conference. Thank you.
Councilmember Jacob.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd also like to just kind of echo what Councilmember Anderson just said. As we debated not too long ago sending anybody to the conference in Las Vegas with the super shopping center people. And yeah, that one. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, that one. And we talked about that, and we said, okay, you got to come back and you got to justify your trip. And so we sent our economic development director, he who shall not be named because he's not here anymore. Hey, those were a good 10 minutes. He was here. We sent him down there. He came back and said, I networked with all these people. They knew we were there. They knew things. And it's hard to quantify networking. Having worked in marketing and sales my whole life, it's hard to quantify it because you don't know when that's going to pay off. You go down there and you talk to 100 people, and you come back and go, gosh, I didn't sign any contracts, I didn't sell anything, I didn't do whatever. But then a month later, 2 months later, 6 months later, a year later, year and a half later, hey, I met you at this, and now I've got a project in your city. Let's talk. And that comes up eventually. And building those relationships, we've heard it from our lobbyists. Every meeting we've had with our lobbyists, they say you've got to build consensus, West Side consensus. You've got to network with other councils. You've got to network with other mayors. You've got to get those relationships in place so that you can have a unified voice when you're going up on the hill and you don't have, West Jordan saying you shouldn't pass this bill and Riverton and South Jordan saying you should pass this bill and Harriman saying, well, we don't know what you should do with this bill. But we can go up there with a unified voice. And the league helps as part of that, but we have to participate in that. The year that I went down was 2 years ago. I went with Councilmember Anderson and Dirk, and we went down and we had a meeting. I think it was you that arranged it, right? Where we met with the leadership of ULCT, and they said, West Jordan's been absent. You aren't coming to stuff, so you're getting overlooked. And it's not just transportation dollars or whatever. Pick your favorite project. You're getting overlooked because you haven't been participating. So it's not the tool that doesn't work. It's if we don't use the tool, it doesn't work. So I'm in favor, and I appreciate what Councilmember McConaughey said, and I was there for part of what he was talking about. Not going to Pomona. I didn't go to Pomona. But I think with these 3 things called out in the council rules, I think it's for a reason. Pomona is not on there. ICSC is not on there. ISCS, ICS, one of those. ABCD is not on there. But these 3 are specifically mentioned. I think it's for good cause. I think these 3 we've kind of, and we may want to include this, by the way, when we rewrite the council rules, that it's understood that some council members will be participating in these three things, because I think it's that necessary for us. So anyway, just wanted to throw that in there as 2 cents, just that you don't necessarily see fruits immediately. I'm happy to come back and, make a list of everybody I talked to. I don't know if that will justify, the expense or whatever, but, when you're there and you have those face-to-face experiences and those shared experiences, even if it's just having dinner together or whatever it might be while you're there, you have that shared relationship building, and it goes a long way in the long run.
Councilmember Whitelock.
So I'm not going to say a ton, but I agree with Councilmember Jacob and Anderson. They're spot on. For at least 3 of the 4 years while I served on the school board, I constantly got asked, where is your city? Where's West Jordan? What's wrong with you guys? We were never showing up anywhere, therefore we couldn't network. Therefore we couldn't put our city out there as a great place to be. It's important, and time again, this council approves continuing ed dollars for our staff. This is basically continuing ed for us, provided by the league. I feel it's a valuable resource, and we should utilize it.
Councilmember Lamb.
Thank you, Mayor. So from last year, just one thing I want to add, I felt like we moved our council to Tuesday to accommodate, but then people didn't go down until Thursday. So as we discussed this, and like you said, you're not going to be here that Wednesday anyway. I'm okay keeping council on Wednesday that day, unless those that are going want to make a change, but I'd recommend keeping it Wednesday and then heading down Thursday. So just my thought there.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with much of what Councilmember Jacob said. And I would point out that with economic development, it's a little bit different with respect to the relationships that are trying to be built. I think the league is more educational than some of the economic development benefits that were used in the example. The other thing is, yes, the city was absent, but it wasn't just from one league meeting. It was from a lot of league meetings and a lot of other events. So I don't have the same conclusion, although I agree with much of what you said. That said, it's obvious that myself and Councilmember Lamb are in the minority, so I really don't see much reason to discuss further, so I would be happy to move forward with a motion.
Okay, try a motion.
A motion preferably from somebody in support, not necessarily from me.
Well, first then, I guess we need to find out who will be here on Wednesday night.
Well, let's do the motion. How about we do the motion?
All right, try a motion.
Okay, I move to approve, I don't know does this even have a resolution number? Okay, I move that we approve travel for those members of our council that desire to attend the semi-annual conference of the Utah Leagues of Cities and Towns.
Councilmember Burton.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Whitelock, a second by Councilmember Burton. Discussion of the motion. Councilmember Jacob.
One thing just to throw in there, to avoid having this conversation 6 months from now when they're here in Salt Lake and we talk about whether we want to pay for the registration, can we throw that in as well to this motion, that we approve that we can go to the conference in September as well for those who want to go? Because I think the principle remains the same. We're just approving, we're not approving a resolution, so I think we can do it.
It's not on the agenda, is there?
Only it's not in your budget. September's obviously in next year's budget. So if you approve it, you're making sure that we put it in the budget for next year.
Right. Yeah. We can leave it out for now and have this conversation again in 6 months. I don't care. I was just trying to speed things along.
Mr. Wall points out if you do try to consider next September, maybe you want to also include the summer or this for both. So you'll be maybe all three, the spring next year. So it's in the budget.
How about in perpetuity? We write it into the rules in perpetuity, and the rules are going to be tweaked anyway. It's already kind of in there.
We have a motion on the table. We have a motion on the table. And we have a second to that motion. Did you want to amend the motion? No.
No, I'm calling the question.
Okay, then let's vote.
Point of order. If the question has been called, I believe we have to have a vote on calling the question before we actually vote on the initial motion.
Okay.
It can be a voice vote, but it has to be two-thirds.
Voice vote?
Voice vote? All in favor?
Call the question.
Calling the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Nay.
Oh.
We have one nay. Okay. And then Councilmember Whitelock.
Okay.
Questions called. Now, I vote on the question.
Okay, vote on the motion, okay. To approve those members of the city council that desire to attend the annual, or the Spring Utah League of City and Town meeting in April. That good? Councilmember Whitelock.
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson.
Yes.
Councilmember McConaughey.
No.
Councilmember Jacob.
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb.
Yes.
Mayor Whiting.
Yes.
Councilmember Burton.
Aye.
Vote passes 6-1 in favor.
Okay, it still raises the question about who all will be here on Wednesday night.
I'll be here.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, so council stays on Wednesday night. Okay?
All right, what was the date of that?
It's 24th, isn't it?
Yeah, the 24th of April.
There's a good possibility I might have to attend remote.
Yeah, that's
Okay, we have 4 that will still be here local. Okay. 9F, discussion of possible action regarding pending legislation.
Mayor, I sent the email out. Hope that was helpful. A couple of things I wanted to add, just as an FYI. The land use and development amendments, HB 315 that I talked about, I mistakenly put Representative Andregs on there. It's actually Representative Wild that's running that bill. This is more of a technical bill that talks about how to do boundary adjustments, vacate right-of-ways, sign plats, and so forth. The SB 34, which is Representative Andregs' bill, the one that you've heard so much about from Mr. Langford and from other members of the staff, is still working its way through. It's on the House floor. It appears that it's probably going to pass. A lot of the acrimony, and I use that word selectively, that was coming from those that would want to take away your Class B and C road funds, that has been, that's gone by the wayside now. They're finally deciding that the way the bill's written, with TIF funds being the carrot, if you will, is the way the bill should read. So if there is going to be a change, it will be that the obligation for cities of the first class and second class will have to meet 6 of the criteria instead of 4. There's talk that may jump up to 8. Even with that, I know Mr. Langford's taken a look at it, and the city's still well on its way to meeting any number of those criteria, so that shouldn't be a problem for the city. Another one I just wanted to point out to you was there's a bill that we've been following on, well, actually there's a couple, but the one I wanted to bring up was, the county formation bill that Representative Coleman's running. It's still circled. Nobody really has any idea when it's going to be uncircled. She talked to the mayors on Monday about it, and my suspicion from what she said is that she still doesn't have a sense that there's enough support that's been expressed to her expressly to ask leadership to uncircle it. Being on the third reading calendar, if they uncircle it and vote on it, unless a representative is quite sure it's going to pass, they'll typically tell leadership, leave it alone a little longer so they can work it farther. But that's the status of that one is still the same. There was one other one that I wanted to, while you're looking. Go ahead, David.
And just so the council's aware, the league and Ms. Otto continue to monitor roughly about 300 bills. And it is our practice and our previous understanding that the LPC is supporting most of those positions unless tonight you tell us differently. That was the purpose of this meeting, is to make sure that we're all staying on the same page. We're not drifting into different lanes. But that's what I have shared with both Rachel, Cameron, our lobbyists, that we are consistently staying in that lane that's been described in those LPC, or excuse me, Rachel's distribution. If you're not getting those are really incredibly informationally valuable. They don't come until after about 10 p.m. every night, but they tell you what happened that day. And then it also sets out the agenda for what's taking place the next day. So in discussing with Mr. Wall, we just thought it was important. We're in the last home stretch. There's about 2 weeks is all that's left. And March 11th through the 14th, we'll likely be up on the Hill all 4 days. Just things, as you know, change up there with a drop of a hat. Councilman Burton, you'd appreciate that, I suspect. And we need to be there so that we can pick up that hat, run with it, whatever we need to do to defend a position that the city may find relevant. So,
and I think it's important that if there's one of the items that the ULCT is supporting and we're opposing, we should let them know. Otherwise, we're pretty much, I think, supporting what the ULCT is supporting.
Mayor, and could I add one thing? What comes out every night is the schedule of hearings for the next day. And if you're interested in those and you're not getting, we can send those to you. Rachel's summary comes out about once every 4 or 5 days. And I've been extracting that information, and that's what I'm sending to you, so you've got those. The other bill I wanted to make you aware of, because this will affect every one of you at some point, unless you purposely resign or, heaven forbid, die. And that is that while you're in office. Representative Weiler is running a bill that would mandate that candidates for office are allowed to place campaign signs. Initially, the bill read on public property. He's since amended it because of concerns that we raised as city attorneys to say that they can be placed on the park strips of residential homes, which is a nice attempt. The problem is this. There was a Supreme Court case 3 years ago where the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that you cannot base your sign regulations of any kind based on content. So if this bill passes and you're allowed to put campaign signs in the park strips, you can no longer prevent any other kinds of signs being placed in your park strips like we used to be able to. We used to discriminate between commercial speech, political speech, and otherwise. We can no longer do that. So that's why the League is so strongly opposing that bill, if you were wondering. I don't know if you're even aware of it, but it's a difficult issue because I don't think philosophically, well, I shouldn't say that. In talking to a lot of elected officials over the years, I know there are a lot of them would like to put campaign signs in the park strips as long as the property owner agrees. The problem is now the Supreme Court has said, irrespective of what states decide, if you make that decision that you can put them in park strips, you can't eliminate all the other signs that want to go up. And that's the problem with the bill. And that's why, at least at this point, the League's opposing it quite vigorously.
Finally, one other item and bill that is certainly getting a lot of attention in the news is Senate Bill 129. That is the effort to address issues dealing with Tier 1, Tier 2 firefighters, police officers. And I do want to provide an opportunity for the chiefs, if they want to make a comment at this point. As of Monday, the LPC took a vote to be in opposition to Senate Bill 129. However, that was prior to and obviously after the events of yesterday that have been in the newspaper. I suspect Senate Bill 129 will be back in front of the LPC on Monday. So if the chiefs, if you wanted to hear from the chiefs, if you want to talk to them privately, that would be something we can either do now, or if you want to do it offline.
Let me just ask you a question, and whoever, the chief or you, David, or Rob, there was what, 5.3 million in one-time funding for that, and then following that, then the cities were going to have to be the ones to make up the difference ongoing? Is that
Yeah,
correct?
the bill currently reads that the state will fund the first year, which is $5 million. The bill prior to this week, when it was heard on the Senate floor, would also have allowed for an additional $3 million to be funded by the state ongoing until approximately 10 years. I've heard 7 years, I've heard 3 years, I've heard 4, but 10 years is what I originally heard. At which point the interest in other accounts that are currently funding the subsidy will be enough that the cities wouldn't have to participate anymore. The bill was amended after a lot of attacks on cities to say that that the bill will pay the $5 million for the first year, but in subsequent years it all has to be picked up by the city. The league's position has not been against the need to address the disparity in benefits to police officers. It's been that it's another unfunded mandate to you as elected officials, where you're being told now by the state how you should compensate police officers. That's the reason most elected officials voted to oppose the bill. On Monday, even before the acrimonious debate on the Senate floor, the league voted to continue that position because the subsequent years after the first year, even though the state was going to fund $3 million, it was still going to leave anywhere from $2 to $2.3 million, is what the estimates the league has been given, that you'd have, not you, not the city, but the cities would have to come up with. Now the bill just says $5 million. It was interesting that during the debate on the floor, one of the representatives said that they needed to call the league's bluff. Another one said that the league, or that the cities reneged on their commitment in 2011 when the percentages of contributions were lowered to what they are now. The cities committed, this is the allegation, that they would take that money that the cities would now be saving by having to contribute less and raise salaries of police officers. And in fact, that didn't happen in most cities. So there was quite a bit of rancor directed to the cities. And in fact, Senator Harper, who sponsored the bill and was promoting the $3 million supplement in subsequent years, actually after the debate voted in favor of the substitute bill, saying that he realizes that he would have preferred his amendment, but he realized it was not going to pass. And it's a big enough issue for him that he wanted the debate to move on to the House, because this issue, the retirement problem, needs to be fixed. So that's kind of the backdrop and the reason that if you have an opinion other than what the league's opinion is now, you probably ought to let David or the mayor or I know, and or if you have questions, you probably ought to talk to Chief Maxfield and Chief Wallentine. I think it's pretty obvious why the chiefs, looking out for the welfare of their employees, think this is something ought to happen. It's one of those rare occasions when the professional organizations of certain positions in cities are at odds with the position of the league. And I'll also tell you, and I think Councilmember Burton was there and so was the mayor, there's not a sentiment in the league amongst those who attend LPC that the system shouldn't be fixed. The concern is that where's the money going to come from? I mean, is the bottom line.
Okay, thank you. And I'd like to hear from them, but first, Councilmember Burton.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I want to thank you, Mayor, and our city manager and our city attorney for being on top of things and monitoring this and watching this and reporting back to us and being strongly involved in this. I think that's very good for our city, so thank you for doing that. And the second one is, and maybe Chief Wallentine wants to speak on this, on House Bill 209. The league hasn't taken a stand on that. Is that something the city wants to do? That's the red flag one. Is there anything you want to say about that, Chief Valentine?
Mayor, do you want me to comment on that now?
Well, I'd rather go back to 129 and let's kind of resolve all our issues there first. So why not?
That's fine.
Sounds like that's where we're going to, I'd like to hear from the two of you, Chief Valentine and Derek, both of you.
Well, probably just by terms of chronology, I've been involved in this issue longer than Chief Maxfield because I've actually been in the system long enough to have started for several years in a contributory system and paid a very large portion of my own retirement in the early years and remember being involved in the discussion many years ago when the state decided that in public safety there should be a 20-year retirement. Now, I'm not saying anybody needs to enter that discussion. It's a valid discussion, but I think that ship has sailed. Nonetheless, I think we all recognize a couple of core facts. In fact, former Senator Lillenquist, to his credit, said, look, we made some pension reforms, and I'm not laying this in the city or any other city. He said, but there were promises made that were swept out the door right after the promises were made with pension reform. But we intended to see significant increases in firefighter and police wages, and the intent, although I didn't agree with him several years ago, and we had some vigorous discussions, the intent was that we would have those officers and firefighters driving their retirement forward in private funds that they would manage, and someday that they, because we have so much time to be financial wizards that we'd have a great retirement. That was fallacious then, it's fallacious now. The fact of the matter is that firefighters and police officers, like every other public employee, were required to put 5 more years in. But unlike every other public employee, our retirement was slashed. And I don't know about firefighters, but I can tell you that around in the surrounding states, it is nearly twice the retirement for a 25-year officer when they leave. I could talk all night about the equities here. The fact of the matter is that we continue to have very astute young people come in this profession that aren't staying. It's not so much not hiring them. We get them in the door, and they come, and they do well for a couple of years. But right at that point that they get to where we really need to keep them because they've developed the judgment skills, they've had their knuckles bruised, and they've learned, quite bluntly, to often use their hearts and their tongues instead of their commands and their fists. When they become really valuable to this community, that's when they say, hey, you know, I've built some skills, and I think I'll go do real estate, or I'll go do some other business, and I'm going to make a lot of money, and I've had my fun. And that's when we lose them. And I wish I could give you a hard dollar cost. I can't give you a hard dollar cost, but I promise you there is a hard dollar cost to that. When I lose it or can't hire, 3 lateral hires I lost this week to another department, and it was all over money. When I lose somebody at that tenure, this city pays, and we pay big. But it's not, you see, you don't have a line in your budget for that. You don't have an account for that. You don't have a loss investment report for that. Now, I don't know for certain, but I believe that Chief Maxfield's in the same position. As a guy who almost 5 years in my career was shot and had my hole plugged by a paramedic, I was very grateful to have my hole plugged by a 20-year paramedic who showed up and knew instantly what to do with that hole that was leaking blood and sucking in air. With all due respect, I hope you can send me the 20-year if I got shot again rather than the 2-year who figures out he can go make money elsewhere. So I'm happy to answer any specific questions then if you want. I've had quite a bit of involvement with Representative Handy in the language in the bill to which you referenced, Councilmember Burton.
Let's hear from Chief Maxfield.
Ditto. No, I obviously I can't speak to the process and the things that have happened over the years like Chief Valentine can, having only been a part of the system as it was. That being said, I would echo what he has said about how it has affected our recruiting and retention. Retention, we don't have as much of a problem with as the police, because within the fire service, for one of our people to go to another agency, they usually have to start at the bottom with all their stuff. There's not an opportunity for a lot of lateral movement. And so once people get the job, they tend to stay a little bit longer. That being said, we do have people that are starting to leave as firefighters to go join the private industry and find other jobs. But where we've seen the biggest hit is probably in our recruiting. And if you were to look back historically, when we put out opportunities to test and fill positions, we used to have hundreds of applicants that used to put in. And now, in many cases, we're lucky to get 100 that apply. And of those 100, many of the applicants we get are not qualified or are eliminated due to other factors like background checks and things like that. So really it has become difficult, and I think if you were to look across, at least in the valley here, you do see a little bit of lateral movement, like Chief Wallentin said, chasing the money. But again, in the fire service, once we get to a certain point, it's not worth going and starting over for a lot of those guys. But it has definitely affected us.
So a question for either one of you is, which would be more beneficial in retention? Is it the annual salaries that they receive, or is it the retirement that they would be looking for?
Well, that of course is Senator Fillmore's focus, and he's of course been the primary opponent as the bill as it was originally suggested. And it's a bit of a mix. For the folks coming in the door, frankly, it's about the cash, it's about the money, it's about whether I could make more money as a police officer, firefighter, or a hod carrier. And you know, we see the Salt Lake Airport project is impacting recruitment for police officers. We understand that. Probably firefighters too. But to address the point that I'm very concerned about, Mayor, and that is keeping those folks that we built. I'm desperately, I should say desperately, but the main focus every single day of my life is to drive forward a culture that is going to sustain that police department for the next generations, for your grandchildren growing up in West Jordan. That's what I focus on. I'm trying to build a culture. And to do that, I've got to keep those people. I've got to keep those people. And so for me, I believe that the city's best interests are to fix the retirement issue. You know, it comes down, somebody's got to pay, and it comes down to money. I philosophically just hate the discussion of talking about pay to play. I hate the notion that some courts are driven by revenue. I hate the notion that some cities put pressure on police officers to write citations for revenue. I hate it, I hate it, I hate it. And yet, the funding stream that's been identified it makes a lot of sense. We have an insurance tax increase that's in the sometimes $10 million plus every year, as well as liquor profit tax that has been targeted to fund this. And I don't know if it's 7 or 10 years. I'm getting different reports from different people at the legislature. But we know that if we can ride on the back of those two income streams, which frankly are unappropriated, it's just kind of hidden, quiet money for the legislature, that we can ride this through to the point that the other funds will have a sufficient balance and be healthy enough 7 or 10 years from now to solve this. But Mayor, and council members, I think that the real fix here that we've just got to put in place to keep good officers, to keep good firefighters, is the retirement issue. When I sat in a committee meeting several terms ago and listened to then Senator Lillenquist say, well, with the savings, we expect the cities will increase their police officer and firefighter salaries 30%, and then we didn't see that. We saw a small COLA the next year, and there you have it, sir. That's what I'm a little bit passionate. I've been involved in this issue literally 35 years.
Derek, do you have any addition to that? Anything else, or?
No, I think the only thing I would add is that, and some of this probably plays into what Chief Wallentin has said as well, is not to blame it on a generational issue, but I think with millennials and some of the people that are coming into the industry, there's a different mindset than what has been there in the past as well, as far as loyalty, and I found a job and I'm going to make a career out of this, versus I'm just chasing the dollar. And whatever city or company or whatever can provide me more, then I'm willing to take my 401k and move over there. So it really has kind of, like I said, become somewhat of a perfect storm right now that's affecting us.
Thank you. Councilmember Jacob.
Thank you, Mayor. Two kind of topics that I want to just hit on. First of all, the bill that we're talking about. Personally, I agree with the league's position. Not that it's not deserved for the public safety employees, but that it's a mandate that's not funded. So if they want to give us a funding mechanism, we can talk about it. If they want to remove that and let the cities come up with ways to make their firefighters and police officers whole, that's great too. And then, so as it sits right now, I'm not in favor of any bill that has an unfunded mandate for the city. That's going to be problematic. Also, any bill that puts us on an unstable fiscal path. We saw city after city in California go bankrupt because they had unfunded pension liabilities. Happen over and over and over again. So we don't want that to happen. So anything we can do to avoid that, let's avoid that. Now, to the issue that we've kind of gotten sidetracked on, I absolutely agree that we need to make our firefighters and police officers whole. And we need to do it as a city, and we need to do it up here, the 7 of us, finance director, soon, budgeter, city manager, mayor in 6 months, or 6 months from when we pass the budget, sorry, 9 months, 10 months from now. It is on you and us to write a budget that first takes care of police and fire. Take care of them. Before we plow the roads, before we put in street lights, before we flush toilets, before any of that, take care of them. Well, maybe water, because we can't live without water. Take care of the police officers and the fire department, and then let's get down to the bottom of the list, and when there's a need for raising taxes for a dog catcher, we can debate that. But let's take care of police and fire first. I don't understand why this is a problem. It's a shift in thinking, which is always hard. But let's cross the most important T and dot the most important I before we get down to the bottom of the list. And we can have a philosophical discussion when budget season comes about what should be at the bottom of the list and what should be at the top of the list, because every department thinks they should be at the top of the list. And I get it. It's what you do. And you want more money for parks, and we want more money for legal, and we want more money for the dog catcher and everybody else. But we've got to make some choices. And if we want to fund police and fire salaries and pensions where they should be and where we want them to be so that we can attract the best and keep the best and do whatever it takes to give those two guys over there the tools that they need, let's do that first. This shouldn't be that hard. It is. I get it. There's a lot more to it than just me up here spouting rhetoric, but that's what should happen first. And lastly, I want to say gesundheit to Councilmember McConaughey. I saw that. It looked painful.
Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just going to say I appreciate what Councilmember Jacob is saying. If we're having to do $3 million, I don't know what department has $3 million that we can.
I think that's statewide.
Was it statewide? Oh, okay. Well, that eases that pain.
And it's 2.3, more or less.
Well, that even eases the pain even further. So, no, we have a lot of things we have to do within the city, and we have a lot of demands. And I think every department we have is important because we're providing a service to our residents, whether it be the dog catcher, whether it be public works, water, sewer, garbage collection, all of those things our residents expect to. And I would argue that everything is, to them, is like turning on a faucet. The water's there, the toilet's flush, I call 911, the fire department comes, the police comes, it snows, the plow comes, the garbage comes every Friday. There's just some expectations that our residents have, and we have to be as perfect as possible with them. So those are my thoughts, and I thank you for the clarification. I just heard 2.3 and 3 million. I'm like, how's this going to come? But if it's statewide, then my nerves are calm. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Let's move on to item number 10, remarks. Anybody have remarks this evening?
What are we going to talk about?
Rob Wall has a remark.
So if they ask us how we're going to vote, what do you want us to do?
Well, we want to find out what it is they're going to do. I mean, I
can tell you right now what the bill says is $5 million for the first year, and cities pick up the rest.
And that could change if you talk to your senators.
And
our two senators are the most influential players in this particular bill.
How could we find out approximately what it would be, what it would cost our city?
That is a very interesting question, Mayor, because in 2011, when this whole thing came to a head, the URS had unlimited data on what these costs were going to be. The league has reached out to them, and the answers they've received is, we can't calculate that. So I think maybe the best we could do is talk to the league and see if maybe they can pull up numbers from 8 years ago, 9 years ago, and then extrapolate what that might be.
Well, let me just say this, I guess. I would support it because I want to support the retirement for our public safety folks. But I just have that big question. The funding is coming from where, and how much is it affecting our city? So, any other? Chris, did you have your hand up waving at me? I didn't see you.
I did. Thank you, Mayor. I don't feel like we have the answer on this one, so I don't want to necessarily take a position for or against, but I would suggest that staff include Chief Wallenstein extensively in conversations. In the end, if we end up having to figure out how to plug a budget hole, because that's what the state decided, okay, that's what we do. But I don't know any better than anybody who is, Chief Wallenstein has spent 35 years with this issue. I would support whatever suggestions he may have, and I would suggest that we authorize him to share an official position of the city, because right now where things are still in kind of in flux and changing so significantly, we don't have anything to really vote on. I would just send the chief with our confidence that he could share our concerns and our perspective with the legislators as they work to come to a conclusion. So I wouldn't say for or against, I would say let's support the chief.
I can tell you that at the ULCT meeting, basically the feeling of the cities was similar to this, that they would support it, but the big question is the funding of it. And so that's the big question that's unanswered yet right now. Councilmember Burton.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree. The state coming and giving us a mandate, not giving us the funding to do it, I think is not correct. But what would be really good is if this doesn't pass, but yet West Jordan goes and fills in that gap and takes care of it anyway, that would help take care of our problem, and we could draw some of these people from the other cities, these people who've been doing it for 20 years, and bring them over into West Jordan. So that would be the ideal situation right there. And then I'd still like to hear about 209, if we could listen to hear what Chief Wallenstein has to say on that one.
Wallenstein, yeah, he's
How many names do you have? I apologize.
It's only Wallenstein on February 14th.
And just for your information, I tried to come here tonight with a per officer cost, and I get nothing from URS, nothing. Just understand that you have 125 police officers and 90, how many firefighters? About 94 firefighters, and
we are a relatively small fraction of the thousands and thousands that this $3.2 million would impact. But I would come, of all the legislators that I worked with over the years, I just got to tell you, Steve Handy has been marvelous on this ERPO. It's called the Red Flag Law, but it's the Extreme Risk Protective Order Act, and he has been, I've been asked by the chiefs to help drive forward this on the side of the chiefs of police. He has been so great in taking our suggestions and actually took some language that I wrote that created liability protections for cities. Another thing that philosophically, frankly, I really don't like is police officers seizing citizens' guns. But, you know, there are circumstances where that's appropriate. So, Councilmember Burton, I'm happy to have a discussion offline or answer any specific questions, but I would tell you that we feel that Representative Handy has addressed the law enforcement concerns. We feel that although there's still some opposition from some groups, we feel that he's also built in some significant civil liberties protections in making sure that persons whose weapons are surrendered or seized get fairly prompt court hearings in an adversarial, so it's a due process response. We would have liked to seen two separate bills, one to address the threat of active shooter, and one to address domestic violence. This is really driven forward by Action Utah, and they're thinking about suicides and domestic violence, very, very great concerns, but somewhat different than the kid who takes his father's AR-15 to Joel P. Jensen, as we had earlier in the year. But we feel like we've reached a workable compromise that doesn't put police officers in harm's way. The original bill, frankly, was a tactical nightmare for our officers, but that's where we're at.
Thank you. With that, I'm going to move on to item 10, remarks. Okay. Corbin's name popped up here. Is that for you, David?
That is me. It's we share the microphone. We have a copy of the Provo City Council rules. It's about 70 pages long. We will forward it to you, if not tonight, tomorrow, so you can at least look at a strong mayor form of government and their rules. It's a well-written document that they've had in place now for a dozen years. It's a template for you to consider what is working in Provo. Mayor Kaufusi and her team are accomplishing things in a way that I think maybe if you want to take a look at it, it's a good starting point.
Thank you. Any other remarks? Okay, then I move that we go to a closed session to discuss the character, professional competence, or physical or mental health of an individual, or a strategy session to discuss pending or reasonably imminent litigation, or a strategy session to discuss the purchase, exchange, or lease of real property, including any form of a water right or water shares. That's a motion. And adjourn from there. Second. We have a second. We have a motion by myself and a second by Councilmember Jacob. Discussion of the motion. Seeing none, let's vote.
Councilmember McConaughey?
Aye.
Councilmember Burton?
Aye.
Councilmember Whitelock?
Yes.
Mayor Whiting?
Yes.
Councilmember Jacob?
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb?
Chris, are you going to join us in closed session?
Yeah, I spoke with Michael Oliver on 10, so it should be a little bit easier than the cell phone thing.
Okay.